You're not as good to lick as she is. Ying Yanin smacked her lips, as if pricked by stubble, then tilted her head to look at Zhuge Yun behind her. Under that gaze, Zhuge Yun couldn't help but shiver, and a ripple of emotion surfaced in her eyes. Ying Yanin, bottle in hand, sauntered back. Fu Hang's mind was a mess. What the hell kind of random intrusion was that? You came over just to lick me? How am I supposed to follow that up? Fu Hang didn't dare turn around, didn't even dare wipe the wetness from his face. He could already imagine the expressions of the four women behind him. Sure enough, Shen Qingluan's expression was grave, Li Weiyang's was full of indignation, while Qin Youchu's smile grew even sweeter, a sweetness that reminded Fu Hang of the poisonous datura flower from wuxia novels. Fu Wanqing was completely numb. Her gaze shifted back to the kitchen, mentally calculating the most convenient angle to swing a bone cleaver. This is definitely a bug. Fu Hang was incredibly exasperated. His eyes darted around the crowd, and in the direction Ying Yanin had left, he spotted a pair of dangling bare feet. Seriously, who takes off their socks while eating? His overbearing aura was proving difficult and rather forced to maintain at this moment. Old Duan, Fu Hang suddenly shouted, his face lighting up with pleasant surprise. But at the entrance of the bustling food stall, a limping man who had just peeked in and was about to leave froze. Old Duan was kicking himself. You little brat, I worried about you for nothing. Old Duan had been in a meeting in a secure room with Trenchcoat Man all day. After leaving, he received a report from his confidant that Li Weiyang had gone to the film set. Although he strongly disapproved of that kid's philandering and promiscuity, he wouldn't want anything bad to actually happen. Sigh, being a parent is tough. When old Duan learned that Li Weiyang had gathered the film crew for a meal, and that Zhuge Yun and Ying Yanin were there, he worried about trouble and rushed over in a panic. But just as he reached the entrance, his gaze pierced through the crowd and landed on the one woman in his life he dared not face. Without a moment's hesitation, old Duan turned to leave. But a voice that spelled trouble rang out, exceptionally loud. Old Duan? Perfect timing. Quick, come on in. Fu Hang beamed and went to greet him. And so, amidst cries of Master Duan, old Duan was dragged by Fu Hang to a private booth and seated directly opposite Fu Wanqing. The atmosphere suddenly turned bizarre. Come, old Duan, let me introduce you. These lovely ladies, you probably know them already. Yu Chu, Weiyang, Qingluan. Qingluan is the chairman of Hengyu Group. And this is my mom, Fu Wanqing, Fu Hang announced enthusiastically. When a situation was spiraling out of control and had reached a deadlock, the introduction of a new element was undoubtedly the key to breaking it. And old Duan clearly fit the bill. He was known as Master Duan in the Jianghu. In this setting, his status was no less than Fu Hang's, and he was a rich source of conversation topics. With old Duan joining, Fu Hang had 100 ways to defuse the current awkwardness. This is old Duan, whom you all know. Mom, let me formally introduce you, old Duan, Duan Changfeng, my sworn brother, my brother in life and death. Fu Hang casually pushed old Duan down onto a chair and made the introductions with gusto. Surprisingly, the other women showed considerable respect, but his old lady's expression. Well, say hello. What are you spacing out for? Fu Hang struck while the iron was hot, determined to muddy the waters. He confidently grabbed a liquor bottle and filled the server in front of old Duan. Big, sis. Old Duan's eyes darted away, and he stammered. Hey, old Duan, are you trying to pull a fast one on me? That's my mom, and you're calling her sis? Fu Hang slapped old Duan on the back, nearly knocking the wind out of him. Old Duan looked up, dazed and utterly confused at Fu Hang. Don't. Fu Wanqing blurted out, stunned. Don't you Jianghu folks have any manners? We're sworn brothers. As the elder brother here, that's just not right of you. If you don't call her Madam or Auntie, at least calling her Auntie wouldn't be beneath you, right? Fu Hang took off his jacket, and his demeanor instantly switched from overbearing Xiao to Jianghu shot caller. Master Duan is probably older than Auntie, right? Calling her that wouldn't be appropriate. Qin Youchu chimed in softly, her lips pursed, her big eyes sparkling with mischief, her thoughts unreadable. Seems so. Fu Hang looked conflicted. Just use names, Fu Wanqing said quietly, her head bowed, not daring to meet the eyes of the man opposite her. Then, Wanqing, old Duan also pursed his lips, then grabbed the just-filled liquor server, forgetting the small cups, tilted his head back, and down the two Yang Baijio. Attaboy, old Duan. Fu Hang's eyes lit up. Opposite him, Fu Wanqing, however, directly picked up Li Weiyang's glass and downed it in one go. Fu Wanqing's own cup contained barley tea. Among the women, only Li Weiyang had alcohol in front of her. Fu Hang was stunned. This is the first time in my life I've seen Mom drink, right? No, wait, something's off with Mom. And old Duan too. An absurd, unsettling thought suddenly crept into his mind. These two, they haven't fallen for each other, have they? A simp is super sharp when it comes to these things. And come to think of it, when Mom was kidnapped last time, old Duan was the first on the scene. Hero saving the damsel. Much? Mom loves watching those romantic idol dramas. Subtly lowering his head, Fu Hang's gaze towards old Duan became wary. This old Duan, with his world-weary, roguish charm, was also quite handsome. He exuded mature, masculine appeal, especially that gangster vibe. Even with a limp, he fit the currently popular cool, older heartthrob image perfectly. Fu Hang couldn't help but compare old Duan with old Wang, and then realized that old Wang the simp didn't stand chance. Damn it, old Wang's a decent guy. No, I have to keep an eye on this limper. Come on. I've been saying we should grab a drink, never had the chance. Since we're all here today, let's us brothers drink to our heart's content. Fu Hang picked up the liquor bottle again and refilled old Duan's server. In his words, he kept stressing the point. We're brothers, right? Buddies. The one sitting opposite you is my mother. But those repeated brothers sounded particularly jarring to the two people at the table. Without a hint of hesitation, old Duan clinked his server with Fu Hang's, tilted his head back, and downed another 2 liang of baijiu. Fu Hang sneered inwardly. I call you brother, and you're trying to be my dad? I'll drink you under the table. Fu Hang tilted his head back and also downed 2 liang. At this moment, the small drinking cups on the table seemed rather redundant. When it came to drinking, the Grandmaster truly feared no one. Ever since he got this freakish body, he had tried countless times to get himself drunk, but never once succeeded. This body's resistance to alcohol was appallingly high. Drinking beer might make him feel bloated, but baijiu? He could drink a whole 2 jin, about a kilogram, and his heart rate wouldn't even flutter. He refilled the 2 liquor servers again, only to see Xiao approaching with Lu Chong. Fu Hang secretly gave a thumbs up in his mind. My biggest gains in recent years were probably recruiting little Xiao and little Wang. Fu Hang was floored. You said you hated me, didn't you? And now you pull this crap? Talk about a point-blank ultimate. Fu Hang was so startled, his eyes wide with astonishment. The Grandmaster hadn't reacted in the slightest. You're not as good to lick as she is. Yanin smacked her lips, as if pricked by stubble, then tilted her head to look at Zhuge Yun behind her. Under that gaze, Zhuge Yun couldn't help but shiver, and a ripple of emotion surfaced in her eyes. Yanin, bottle in hand, sauntered back. Fu Hang's mind was a mess. What the hell kind of random intrusion was that? You came over just to lick me? How am I supposed to follow that up? Fu Hang didn't dare turn around, didn't even dare wipe the wetness from his face. He could already imagine the expressions of the 4 women behind him. Sure enough, Shen Qingluan's expression was grave, Li Weiyang's was full of indignation, while Qin Youchu's smile grew even sweeter, a sweetness that reminded Fu Hang of the poisonous datura flower from wuxia novels. Fu Wanqing was completely numb. Her gaze shifted back to the kitchen, mentally calculating the most convenient angle to swing a bone cleaver. This is definitely a bug. Fu Hang was incredibly exasperated. His eyes darted around the crowd, and in the direction Yanin had left, he spotted a pair of dangling bare feet. Seriously, who takes off their socks while eating? His overbearing aura was proving difficult and rather forced to maintain at this moment. Old Duan, Fu Hang suddenly shouted, his face lighting up with pleasant surprise. But at the entrance of the bustling food stall, a limping man who had just peeked in and was about to leave froze. Old Duan was kicking himself. You little brat, I worried about you for nothing. Old Duan had been in a meeting in a secure room with Trenchcoat Man all day. After leaving, he received a report from his confidant that Li Weiyang had gone to the film set. Although he strongly disapproved of that kid's philandering and promiscuity, he wouldn't want anything bad to actually happen. Besides, being a parent is tough. When old Duan learned that Li Weiyang had gathered the film crew for a meal, and that Zhuge Yun and Yanin were there, he worried about trouble and rushed over in a panic. But just as he reached the entrance, his gaze pierced through the crowd and landed on the one woman in his life he dared not face. Without a moment's hesitation, old Duan turned to leave. But a voice that spelled trouble rang out, exceptionally loud. Old Duan? Perfect timing. Quick, come on in. Fu Hang beamed and went to greet him. And so, amidst cries of Master Duan, old Duan was dragged by Fu Hang to a private booth and seated directly opposite Fu Wanqing. The atmosphere suddenly turned bizarre. Come, old Duan, let me introduce you. These lovely ladies. You probably know them already. Yu Chu, Wei Yang, Qingluan. Qingluan is the chairman of Hengyu Group. And this is my mom, Fu Wanqing, Fu Heng announced enthusiastically. When a situation was spiraling out of control and had reached a deadlock, the introduction of a new element was undoubtedly the key to breaking it. And old Duan clearly fit the bill. He was known as Master Duan in the Jianghu. In this setting, his status was no less than Fu Heng's, and he was a rich source of conversation topics. With old Duan joining, Fu Heng had 100 ways to defuse the current awkwardness. This is old Duan, whom you all know. Mom, let me formally introduce you, old Duan, Duan Changfeng, my sworn brother, my brother in life and death. Fu Heng casually pushed old Duan down onto a chair and made the introductions with gusto. Surprisingly, the other women showed considerable respect, but his old lady's expression. Well, say hello. What are you spacing out for? Fu Heng struck while the iron was hot, determined to muddy the waters. He confidently grabbed a liquor bottle and filled the server in front of old Duan. Big, sis. Old Duan's eyes darted away, and he stammered. Hey, old Duan, are you trying to pull a fast one on me? That's my mom, and you're calling her sis? Fu Heng slapped old Duan on the back, nearly knocking the wind out of him. Old Duan looked up, dazed and utterly confused at Fu Heng. Don't you Jianghu folks have any manners? We're sworn brothers. As the elder brother here, that's just not right of you. If you don't call her madam or auntie, at least calling her auntie wouldn't be beneath you, right? Fu Heng took off his jacket, and his demeanor instantly switched from overbearing so to Jianghu shot caller. Don't, Fu Wanqing blurted out, stunned. Master Duan is probably older than auntie, right? Calling her that wouldn't be appropriate. Qin Yuchu chimed in softly, her lips pursed, her big eyes sparkling with mischief, her thoughts unreadable. Seems so. Fu Heng looked conflicted. Just use names, Fu Wanqing said quietly, her head bowed, not daring to meet the eyes of the man opposite her. Then, Wanqing, old Duan also pursed his lips, then grabbed the just-filled liquor server, forgetting the small cups, tilted his head back, and down the 2 yang of baijiu. Attaboy, old Duan. Fu Heng's eyes lit up. Opposite him, Fu Wanqing, however, directly picked up Li Weiyang's glass and downed it in one go. Fu Wanqing's own cup contained barley tea. Among the women, only Li Weiyang had alcohol in front of her. Fu Heng was stunned. This is the first time in my life I've seen Mom drink, right? No, wait, something's off with Mom. And old Duan too. An absurd, unsettling thought suddenly crept into his mind. These two, they haven't fallen for each other, have they? A simp is super sharp when it comes to these things. And come to think of it, when Mom was kidnapped last time, old Duan was the first on the scene. Hero saving the damsel. Much? Mom loves watching those romantic idol dramas. Subtly lowering his head, Fu Heng's gaze towards old Duan became wary. This old Duan, with his world-weary, roguish charm, was also quite handsome. He exuded mature, masculine appeal, especially that gangster vibe. Even with a limp, he fit the currently popular cool, older heartthrob image perfectly. Fu Heng couldn't help but compare old Duan with old Wang, and then realized that old Wang the simp didn't stand chance. Damn it, old Wang's a decent guy. No, I have to keep an eye on this limper. Come on. I've been saying we should grab a drink, never had the chance. Since we're all here today, let's as brothers drink to our heart's content. Fu Heng picked up the liquor bottle again and refilled old Duan's server. In his words, he kept stressing the point. We're brothers, right? Buddies. The one sitting opposite you is my mother. But those repeated brothers sounded particularly jarring to the two people at the table. Without a hint of hesitation, old Duan clinked his server with Fu Heng's, tilted his head back, and down another 2 yang of baijiu. Fu Heng sneered inwardly. I call you brother, and you're trying to be my dad? I'll drink you under the table. Fu Heng tilted his head back and also down 2 yang. At this moment, the small drinking cups on the table seemed rather redundant. When it came to drinking, the Grandmaster truly feared no one. Ever since he got this freakish body, he had tried countless times to get himself drunk, but never once succeeded. This body's resistance to alcohol was appallingly high. Drinking beer might make him feel bloated, but baijiu? He could drink a whole 2 jin, about a kilogram, and his heart rate wouldn't even flutter. He refilled the 2 liquor servers again, only to see Xiaofeng approaching with Lu Chong. Fu Heng secretly gave a thumbs up in his mind. My biggest gains in recent years were probably recruiting little Xia and little Wang. Director Lu was actually pretty excited. Ever since Fu Hang showed up, everything about the guy had taken him by surprise. He'd dealt with more investors than he could count, but someone like Fu Hang, so down-to-earth, so approachable, was a first. Easy to work with, never putting on airs, transferred money without a fuss, and didn't interfere with the filming at all. He was the dream backer. How could you not want to give your all for someone like that? Lu Chong was all respect and enthusiasm, raising his glass with Fu Hang and downing 3 drinks in a row while showering him with compliments. Fu Hang was equally warm in response, offering full emotional support, practically moving director Lu to tears. What really got to him was when Fu Hang said, "Whatever ideas you've got, go for them. Don't worry about budget or returns. Our job is to make a damn good film. Just go all in. If you run out of money, have Tion die, let me know." Just listen to that. What kind of investor even says things like that? "And don't just toast me," Fu Hang added. "Duan's my brother. You want to make this kind of film? He's your key." With a discreet glance, Fu Hang signaled to Lu. A veteran of many a drinking scene, Lu Chong got the hint instantly. He turned his focus to Duan and drank 5 rounds straight with him, laying it on thick with the flattery. The room quickly heated up. Writers, crew, extras, everyone crowded around a toast. Fu Hang didn't refuse a single one, clinking glasses and drinking like it was a wedding banquet, drawing cheers from the crowd. Even Duan, already tipsy, had drunk quite a bit, now slumped half-conscious in his chair, his eyes glazed and mind fuzzy. Empty bottles were cleared away. Brother Haonan came in carrying a case of baijiu, took a glass from one of the assistants, and stood respectfully to the side. "Haonan." Fu Hang's words were a bit slurred now. Staring at Haonan's aggrieved expression, he suddenly felt a little guilty. He'd figure out why Haonan was being replaced, just a case of getting stuck in the system. "Boss, this one's for you," Haonan said, clearly moved by the sincerity in Fu Hang's eyes. His voice caught as he raised a glass and knocked it back in one gulp. But Fu Hang, glass in hand, didn't drink. Haonan immediately panicked, and the others in line for a toast held their breath. "I told you you're the lead. Then you're the lead. Director Lu, come here. Can you handle shooting 2 films at once?" Fu Hang asked, staring him down. "Double productions?" Lu's eyes lit up. Back in the day on Hong Kong Island, under pressure from investors, crews churned out entire films in a week. Double productions? He'd done triple. Now, with money not being a problem, he'd do 5 if needed. "What kind of film do you want, mister?" "Fu," Lu asked, clearly intrigued. "Still gang-related? Still undercover stuff?" Fu Hang replied, frowning slightly as he glanced at Duan. That moment when Duan had turned a gun on his own leg to stop him from going berserk. That scene was seared into his memory. Whatever issues they'd had, even if Duan had his eye on his mom, when it came to this, he owed the man. "You mean like a spin-off?" Director Lu misunderstood, thinking it was another young and dangerous style flick. No. This time, it's a dual protagonist setup. "Duan, how about it? Want to play a role? You'll be the undercover cop." Fu Hang's eyes lit up. "Me? Undercover?" Duan sat up straighter, some of the alcohol clearing. His interest was clearly piqued. From the start of the evening, even though he hadn't looked at Fu Wanqing again, his attention had never really left her. He could sense it clearly. Every time someone toasted him and shouted "Uncle Duan," she visibly tensed. Of course. Who would have thought the man she bet her whole life on turned out to be a gangster? A degenerate? But how could he explain himself? Undercover. What a loaded word. "Yeah, you play the undercover cop. A guy who infiltrates a gang on behalf of the police, carrying that burden, getting dragged deeper and deeper into the underworld." As Fu Hang finished, the people around looked puzzled. "Wait, isn't that just the same setup as before? Wasn't that Haonan's role? So, all this drama, just because Ing Yanin licked your face? And now you're kicking him out to cast Duan? Then, what about me?" Haonan looked lost. Fu Hang had just promised he'd still be the lead. "You're also undercover, but you're the one the gang sent to infiltrate the police." Fu Hang grinned, ideas flowing like a waterfall. "Goddamn, I'm a genius." The crew still looked skeptical, but Lu Chong's eyes went wide. Holy crap, that twist. A blonde-haired guy elbowed his way through the crowd, visibly excited. "And you are?" Fu Hang was startled. "He's a screenwriter," Lu Chong said quickly. "Oh, you've thought of this angle before." Fu Hang was pleasantly surprised. "A kindred spirit. Yeah, I even wrote a web novel with this premise. But it got axed in review for being too sensitive," the guy said, looking dejected. "You're a web novelist too?" Fu Hang asked, eyeing him up. This guy. Bleach blonde hair, Coke bottle glasses, dark circles so deep they looked painted on, and now shirtless from all the drinking, showing off a wiry frame with a tattoo, possibly a snake, maybe a dragon, curling down from his neck to his chest. This guy's a writer? Man, web novels really do have a low bar. Just something I did for fun in my spare time, the blonde said, looking sheepish under Fu Hang's scrutiny. What's your pen name? What platform? I might have read your stuff, Fu Hang said, realizing he might have been a bit too harsh and trying to connect. The blonde started to answer, then visibly flinched as someone jabbed him in the back. He coughed awkwardly. He's just a washed-up hack, Hao-Nan cut in quickly. A washed-up hack is still a writer. And he's the screenwriter now. How many web authors can say that? No worries, just tell me your pen name. I'll send you gifts, Fu Hang said, waving off Hao-Nan's interruption like a boss. This guy might be the one to write the new script. I go by Mr. Clearstream, the blonde muttered, voice trailing off. Fu Hang's expression turned fascinating. You're Mr. Clearstream? The guy who wrote hundreds of thousands of words and still hadn't found the plot? No wonder you're a flop. I deleted that account already, the blonde rushed to add. No way he wanted Fu Hang looking it up. They had something in common, though. Fu Hang had also used the name Clearstream as a stage alias once. What kind of dumb luck is this? You changed it? Fu Hang asked, twitching with mild irritation. He felt like he just swallowed a fat green fly. Yeah, I go by Pest Control Captain now, the blonde said, shrinking back a little, face flushing with shame. Fu Hang's irritation. He felt like he just swallowed a fat green fly. Ish thought of this, it seemed. There's some name. Fu Hang was floored. You said you hated me, didn't you? And now you pull this crap? Talk about a point-blank ultimate. Fu Hang was so startled, his eyes wide with astonishment. The Grandmaster hadn't reacted in the slightest. Director Liu was actually pretty excited. Ever since Fu Hang showed up, everything about the guy had taken him by surprise. He'd dealt with more investors than he could count, but someone like Fu Hang, so down-to-earth, so approachable, was a first. Easy to work with, never putting on airs, transferred money without a fuss, and didn't interfere with the filming at all. He was the dream backer. How could you not want to give your all for someone like that? Liu Chong was all respect and enthusiasm, raising his glass with Fu Hang and downing 3 drinks in a row while showering him with compliments. Fu Hang was equally warm in response, offering full emotional support, practically moving director Liu to tears. What really got to him was when Fu Hang said, "Whatever ideas you've got, go for them. Don't worry about budget or returns. Our job is to make a damn good film. Just go all in. If you run out of money, have Tion die, let me know." Just listen to that. What kind of investor even says things like that? And don't just toast me, Fu Hang added. Duan's my brother. You want to make this kind of film? He's your key. With a discreet glance, Fu Hang signaled to Liu. A veteran of many a drinking scene, Liu Chong got the hint instantly. He turned his focus to Duan and drank 5 rounds straight with him, laying it on thick with the flattery. The room quickly heated up. Writers, crew, extras, everyone crowded around a toast. Fu Hang didn't refuse a single one, clinking glasses and drinking like it was a wedding banquet, drawing cheers from the crowd. Even Duan, already tipsy, had drunk quite a bit, now slumped half-conscious in his chair, his eyes glazed and mind fuzzy. Empty bottles were cleared away. Brother Hao-Nan came in carrying a case of baijiu, took a glass from one of the assistants, and stood respectfully to the side. Hao-Nan. Fu Hang's words were a bit slurred now. Staring at Hao-Nan's aggrieved expression, he suddenly felt a little guilty. He'd figure out why Hao-Nan was being replaced, just a case of getting stuck in the system. "Boss, this one's for you," Hao-Nan said, clearly moved by the sincerity in Fu Hang's eyes. His voice caught as he raised a glass and knocked it back in one gulp. But Fu Hang, glass in hand, didn't drink. Hao-Nan immediately panicked, and the others in line for a toast held their breath. "I told you you're the lead, then you're the lead. Director Liu, come here." Though Liu Chong was fairly drunk, he snapped to attention at those words. "Can you handle shooting 2 films at once?" Fu Hang asked, staring him down. "Double productions?" Liu's eyes lit up. Back in the day on Hong Kong Island, under pressure from investors, crews churned out entire films in a week. Double productions? He'd done triple. Now, with money not being a problem, he'd do 5 if needed. "What kind of film do you want, mister?" "Fu," Liu asked, clearly intrigued. "Still gang-related? Still undercover stuff?" Fu Hang replied, frowning slightly as he glanced at Duan. That moment when Duan had turned a gun on his own leg to stop him from going berserk. That scene was seared into his memory. Whatever issues they'd had, even if Duan had his eye on his mom, when it came to this, he owed the man. "You mean like a spin-off?" Director Liu misunderstood, thinking it was another young and dangerous style flick. No. This time, it's a dual protagonist setup. "Duan, how about it? Want to play a role? You'll be the undercover cop." Fu Hang's eyes lit up. "Me? Undercover?" Duan sat up straighter, some of the alcohol clearing. His interest was clearly piqued. From the start of the evening, Even though he hadn't looked at Fu Wanqing again, his attention had never really left her. He could sense it clearly. Every time someone toasted him and shouted Uncle Duan, she visibly tensed. Of course. Who would have thought the man she bet her whole life on turned out to be a gangster? A degenerate? But how could he explain himself? Undercover. What a loaded word. Yeah, you play the undercover cop. A guy who infiltrates a gang on behalf of the police, carrying that burden, getting dragged deeper and deeper into the underworld. As Fu Hang finished, the people around looked puzzled. Wait, isn't that just the same setup as before? Wasn't that Haonan's role? So, all this drama, just because Ing Yanin licked your face? And now you're kicking him out to cast Duan? Then, what about me? Haonan looked lost. Fu Hang had just promised he'd still be the lead. You're also undercover, but you're the one the gang sent to infiltrate the police. Fu Hang grinned, ideas flowing like a waterfall. Goddamn, I'm a genius. The crew still looked skeptical, but Lu Chong's eyes went wide. Holy crap, that twist. A blonde-haired guy elbowed his way through the crowd, visibly excited. And you are? Fu Hang was startled. He's the screenwriter, Lu Chong said quickly. Oh, you've thought of this angle before. Fu Hang was pleasantly surprised. A kindred spirit. Yeah, I even wrote a web novel with this premise. But it got axed in review for being too sensitive, the guy said, looking dejected. You're a web novelist too? Fu Hang asked, eyeing him up. This guy. Bleached blonde hair, Coke bottle glasses, dark circles so deep they looked painted on, and now shirtless from all the drinking, showing off a wiry frame with a tattoo. Possibly a snake, maybe a dragon, curling down from his neck to his chest. This guy's a writer? Man, web novels really do have a low bar. Just something I did for fun in my spare time, the blonde said, looking sheepish under Fu Hang's scrutiny. What's your pen name? What platform? I might have read your stuff, Fu Hang said, realizing he might have been a bit too harsh and trying to connect. The blonde started to answer, then visibly flinched as someone jabbed him in the back. He coughed awkwardly. He's just a washed-up hack, Haonan cut in quickly. A washed-up hack is still a writer. And he's the screenwriter now. How many web authors can say that? No worries, just tell me your pen name. I'll send you gifts, Fu Hang said, waving off Haonan's interruption like a boss. This guy might be the one to write the new script. I go by Mr. Clearstream. The blonde muttered, voice trailing off. Fu Hang's expression turned fascinating. You're Mr. Clearstream? The guy who wrote hundreds of thousands of words and still hadn't found the plot? No wonder you're a flop. I deleted that account already, the blonde rushed to add. No way he wanted Fu Hang looking it up. They had something in common, though. Fu Hang had also used the name Clearstream as a stage alias once. What kind of dumb luck is this? You changed it, Fu Hang asked, twitching with mild irritation. He felt like he just swallowed a fat green fly. Yeah, I go by Pest Control Captain now, the blonde said, shrinking back a little, face flushing with shame. And just like that, the new script was magically greenlit. With the entire cast and crew committed to working on dual productions, the atmosphere grew even more fervent. President Fu had announced that with 2 shows on the go, it wasn't about one person doing 2 jobs, but rather everyone could receive double pay. This instantly sent everyone's enthusiasm through the roof. The scene quickly devolved entirely into a drinking competition. Fu Hang was still holding the fort, taking on all comers. But after he managed to take down Brother Haonan, the number of people lining up to toast him noticeably dwindled. This was because Xiao, who hadn't touched a drop while mingling in the crowd, started to make his presence felt. He didn't jump out to challenge anyone to a drink-off. Instead, his icy gaze precisely targeted everyone who was about to propose a toast to Fu Hang. Are you kidding me? The boss can show off his magnanimity, but I have to be the firewall. If he keeps drinking like this, what if he actually damages his health? Haven't you noticed he's already slurring his words? Even those trying to toast old Duan were intercepted by old Duan's trusted men. Thus, the highly enthusiastic men began their own internal skirmishes. With Fu Hang having set the ball rolling, the men drank with fiery gusto. Soon, not a single complete sentence could be heard amidst the revelry at the food stall. Fu Hang's head drooped, and he barely managed to keep himself upright, tilting his head back and giggling foolishly. But strangely, not a single woman got up to take care of him, not even his own mother. Shen Qingluan watched the drinking men with great interest, her spirits high, even theatrically jeering and shouting a few encouraging calls. Li Weiyang appeared quite demure. Although she switched to a soft drink after just 1 glass of alcohol, her face was flushed, looking for all the world like she couldn't hold her liquor. In truth, she was hesitant. She still wasn't comfortable in such situations and even regretted having that 1 drink. Shen Qingluan and Qin Yuchu haven't had any alcohol. Only me. Does this make me seem less dignified? Qin Yuchu was, as always, clinging sweetly to someone, but during this meal, it wasn't Fu Hang she was attending to, but Fu Wanqing. Throughout the meal, she constantly served her mother-in-law, picking up food for her, pouring drinks, handing her tissues, and even helped peel 2 shrimp. This allowed the distraught Fu Wanqing, whose mind was miles away, to feel a sliver of connection to reality. Fu Wanqing's thoughts were a tangled mess. Ever since old Duan had sat down, she hadn't had the mental capacity to care about the drama between Fu Hang and this bevy of women. It brought to mind that old saying, "Oh, what is love in this world?" It truly leaves one utterly confused, disoriented, befuddled, and muddled. Just as Fu Hang was swaying precariously, wondering if he should just vomit on the spot and get it over with, Fang Tiandai arrived, leading Zhuge Yun. Zhuge Yun was actually reluctant. She wanted to stay and take care of Ing Yanin, who was already unconscious. Ing Yanin had drunk to her heart's content. No one had specifically toasted her, but she had managed to get herself thoroughly drunk, slumping over the table and muttering, "You're not as good at licking as her. I'll let you lick me." But Fang Tiandai seemed to have sized up the situation. She felt that if Zhuge Yun didn't make an appearance on such an occasion, her future stardom would be in serious jeopardy. One had to maintain connections with the core circle. The two silently stood beside Fu Hang. Zhuge Yun held a wine cup, her head lowered, not daring to speak. Fang Tiandai, however, also didn't say anything. At this moment, it wasn't appropriate for her to overstep. She should have let Zhuge Yun come alone, but she worried Zhuge Yun couldn't command the situation. By standing beside her, she might not be able to push things forward, but at least she could provide a defensive position. Fu Hang, in a daze, suddenly saw a pair of feet appear before him. "Damn it, aren't you cold? Coming over barefoot? The floor of this food stall is all greasy. Your feet will get filthy." Fu Hang suddenly felt a desperate urge for another drink, and also wanted to eat some meat. He had only been drinking all evening and had barely touched his chopsticks. Thank you, President Fu, for your guidance." After being pinched 3 times on her back, Zhuge Yun finally mustered her courage and softly spoke her line. She bowed her head, cupped her hands in a salute, holding a small wine cup in her palms. She looked adorably dazed. "My man has had too much to drink. I'll take this one for him." Qin Yochu's gentle voice sounded as she steadily positioned herself in front of Fu Hang. Fang Tiandai's heart tightened. She raised her wine cup with an apologetic smile, but her words of excuse were cut short by Qin Yochu's piercing gaze. Then, Qin Yochu's gaze landed squarely on Zhuge Yun's face. Zhuge Yun froze. This girl's eyes are so captivating. How does she manage to make such pure eyes look so incredibly sharp? Is this the kind of woman who's by the boss's side? It must be wonderful to be with the boss. Because Fu Hang was sitting where he was, Zhuge Yun hadn't actually dared to look in this direction much. So, she had never gotten a proper look at Qin Yuchu. Now their eyes met. Zhuge Yun's heart skipped a beat. She felt herself completely ensnared by those eyes that seemed innocent, yet were full of an almost predatory aggression. Zhuge Yun was speechless, her hand holding the wine, cup trembling slightly, causing the liquor within to ripple, much like a young girl's budding, flustered emotions. Her gaze instinctively shifted downwards, avoiding those eyes that had mesmerized her. But the next moment, Zhuge Yun was utterly astonished. So I have a thing for impressive assets? Such a slim waist, yet so imposing, so magnificent. Zhuge Yun licked her lips, her eyes widening bit by bit. Everything around her seemed to freeze. In her eyes, there was only that breathtaking silhouette. What? Am I not worthy of drinking this? Qin Yochu's brow furrowed slightly. Zhuge Yun's intense stare made her feel offended. Not even Fu Hang had ever stared at her so brazenly. She felt her skin crawl under the scrutiny. Her gaze couldn't help but start sizing up this newly debuted female singer before her. Then, Qin Yochu's eyes twitched. Barefoot? What kind of strange quirk was this? And these feet. Qin Yuchu felt like she had keenly and suddenly figured out where Fu Hang's billions had gone. Qin Yochu's eyes narrowed slightly, the corners of her mouth curving up into a subtle smile. But the next moment, her smile froze on her face, because a hand had appeared on her chest. Bayu, a strange sound effect echoed in her mind. The prodigy's superbrain experienced a rare, complete system crash. Fu Hang was almost shock sober. He stared blankly at the scene before him, the same apt onomatopoeia popping into his own mind. So this is how we're playing now, huh? Thank you, President Qin, for your favor. Fong Tiandai almost roared. She downed her drink in one gulp, then grabbed Zhuge Yun's cup and practically forced it to Zhuge Yun's lips. She felt like she was going to lose her mind. There were over 100 intoxicated brutes at the scene. If the boss gave the order right now, the two of them would probably be chopped up and rolled into meatballs on the spot, wouldn't they? After all these days, she finally understood where the extras in this film crew had really come from. As the strong liquor went down her throat, Zhuge Yun coughed violently. That audacious hand naturally, and with apparent reluctance, detached itself from the magnificent mountain. Zhuge Yun was roughly pulled away, leaving Qin Yuchu standing there holding her cup, a completely bewildered expression on her face. Was I just molested by my love rival? She turned to Fu Hang in astonishment, only to see him looking up at the ceiling with an air of transcendent detachment, as if he were about to ride the wind and depart. She silently put down her wine cup. The sensation of being grabbed on her chest was still shockingly vivid. She glanced around and saw Xiaofeng with his back to her, blocking the view from others like a solid wall. Turning another way, she found Li Weiyang's eyes burning intensely, her thoughts unreadable. Meanwhile, Shen Qingluan's alluring peach blossom eyes were narrowed with unconcealed amusement. Fortunately, Fu Wanqing kept her head down the entire time, showing no sign of having looked up. She took a deep breath. Her usual defenses of unshakable calm and gentle deflection had been ruthlessly countered for the first time. She felt utterly disoriented. So, is this one an ally or a traitor? As the banquet wound down, Xiaofeng was stationed by the door, meticulously organizing the procession of barely conscious bodies. Shen Qingluan had her own driver. After politely bidding Fu Wanqing farewell, she departed alone. As she left, under Fu Wanqing's watchful eyes, she gave Fu Hang a deep, lingering look but didn't approach him to speak. That single glance was a whirlwind of tangled thoughts, a thicket of persistent longing, a surge of unspoken emotions, and a flurry of old memories. Li Weiyang also left by herself, slipping away so quietly that Fu Hang had no idea if she'd even settled her share of the bill. Zhuge Yun, pulled along by Fong Tiandai, helped two makeup artists escort an unconscious Ing Yanin to the company van. Zhuge Yun's face was flushed the entire time, though whether from the wine or something else remained a mystery. Her eyes darted about, flitting between Ing Yanin, Qin Yuchu, and even Shen Qingluan. Fu Hang, who should have gone home with Qin Yuchu and Fu Wanqing, instead threw a drunken fit, insisting on seeing old Duan home. Slurring his words, he bellowed, "Brothers for life, a bond for an eternity. 3 jugs of strong brew, and we'll roam the 4 seas wide." He absolutely couldn't abandon his brother, he declared. These words made Fu Wanqing's skin crawl. She quickly grabbed Yuchu and made a swift exit. Fu Hang, supporting old Duan, staggered toward the parking lot. Led by one of old Duan's men, they found his car. With considerable effort, Fu Hang bundled old Duan into the back seat. But instead of getting in himself, he slammed the car door shut and leaned against it with one hand, looking as if he were about to be sick. Old Duan's trusted subordinate, who had followed them, saw this and rushed forward, but Fu Hang stopped him with a raised hand. After a long moment, as the clamor from the party faded into the distance, Fu Hang slowly straightened up. His eyes were clear and profound. All trace of drunkenness had vanished. "You didn't drink, did you?" Fu Hang lit a cigarette, calmly observing the underling. "No, sir." The man understood instantly. So this is what it's like working for an entertainment mogul. A true actor, he thought. "Can you get him home?" Fu Hang offered him a cigarette. "Rest assured, sir." The underling declined, saying he didn't smoke. Fu Hang waved a hand, clapped the man firmly on the shoulder, then stuffed his hands in his pockets and walked off into the darkness. The underling gave a slight, knowing smirk. Wasting no time on questions, he opened the driver's door and started the car. After the car had passed 2 intersections, old Duan, who had been playing dead to the world, slowly lifted his head and lit a cigarette. "I was actually worried you'd gotten hammered," the underling said, glancing at the rearview mirror with a smile. "In our line of work, who'd dare let themselves get truly drunk?" Old Duan took a melancholic drag from his cigarette, exhaling slowly. His gaze drifted through the window to the neon-drenched, hedonistic city lights outside. "Are you really going to act in a movie?" the underling asked, an amused grin on his face. "Why not? You think this old mug of mine is worse than those so-called top-tier celebrities?" Old Duan's eyebrow twitched, a hint of his usual menace leaking out. "It's not out of the question. Back in the day, plenty of big bosses in Hong Kong dabbled in acting for kicks. But still, shouldn't you report this to the higher-ups? Old Duan fell silent, a flicker of conflict in his eyes. Inexplicably, the file on that ship captain surfaced in his mind. SIMP. Old Duan suddenly cursed, his voice laced with venom. Fu Heng walked alone through the streets. The cold wind on his face was refreshing, yet didn't seem to clear the fog in his mind. The city's cacophony was particularly stark now, but having just emerged from the boisterous, crowded food stall, he felt an acute sense of desolation. Images of beautiful faces flashed before his eyes, followed by towering peaks, delicate wasp waists, perfectly straight legs, and dainty, rosy feet. Damn this wicked capitalism. Fu Heng cursed inwardly. He didn't dare go home. He genuinely didn't know how to face Qin Yuchu. It felt as though some of the shackles and restraints around his heart had begun to loosen after his outburst. I'm done pretending. I'm laying my cards on the table. This realization filled him with a profound sense of guilt every time he thought of Yuchu. Was this a man's true nature? In the past, rather than a simp, he'd been an out-and-out workhorse, with eyes for nothing but his job. Driven by the system, he'd been like an unfeeling machine. Even when faced with clients of myriad charms and intoxicating allure, his heart had remained utterly unmoved. Until he met Qin Yuchu. With her, he had once again felt the raw authenticity of being human. But as his humanity reawakened, so too, it seemed, did his desires. He found himself increasingly craving the system's rewards, and, simultaneously, his desire for women had been rekindled. He started noticing Li Weiyang's waist, Shen Qingluan's back, Ing Yanen's legs, Zhuge Yun's feet. This threw him into confusion. He wasn't like this before. Could it be the system messing with him again? So, was this an awakening of his humanity, or was his soul losing its way? Fu Heng suddenly felt a surge of agitation. He looked up. The street's dazzling neon lights pulsed, and he could faintly hear the throb of deafening music. A bar? A smirk touched Fu Heng's lips. He really hadn't had enough to drink. Damn it, was he even human anymore? He downed several gin of baijiu and felt completely sober. For no particular reason, Fu Heng wanted to get drunk again. Following the distant beat, Fu Heng headed towards the bar. It looked quite upscale. It wasn't very late, but there was already a line at the door, with entry being managed. Four burly bouncers in black stood at the entrance, their sharp eyes raking over the queue. When they spotted a sufficiently attractive girl, they would crack a serious-looking grin and wave her over, signaling she could cut the line. The chosen girl would then proudly sashay past the crowd and up the steps, while those still waiting showed no sign of displeasure. Beauty, more often than not, is a form of capital, an advantage, an asset in itself. Fu Heng, hands in his pockets, walked straight towards the entrance, completely ignoring the queue. A bouncer frowned and raised a hand to stop him, but then Fu Heng lifted his left hand, casually revealing the expensive watch on his wrist as if merely checking the time. The bouncer immediately let him pass. In a place like this, a watch was far more effective than a 3060. The deafening music made his scalp tingle, and the deep bass vibrated through his chest. Yet, Fu Heng felt completely at ease. He swayed slowly to the rhythm, not looking at anyone around him, and headed straight for the bar. Finding an empty seat, Fu Heng beckoned the bartender. "Your strongest stuff, and don't be stingy," Fu Heng said, his voice raised to be heard over the music. The bartender subtly glanced at Fu Heng's wrist resting on the bar, a knowing smile appearing. He turned and took a bottle of foreign liquor from the shelf. Fu Heng didn't wait for him to finish pouring, grabbed the half-filled glass, and downed it in one go. Then he raised an eyebrow at the bartender. This time, the bartender truly understood and simply left the entire bottle for Fu Heng. Fu Heng poured and drank by himself, and the bottle was soon empty. The bartender was momentarily stunned, but expertly produced another bottle. This time, however, he didn't hand it directly to Fu Heng, but presented a QR code from the bar. Fu Heng didn't even glance at it, just took out his phone, scanned it, and transferred 100,000. The bartender's eyes lit up. He bent down, brought out another bottle, unsealed both new bottles, and pushed them towards Fu Heng. "Can you buy me a drink?" A sultry voice whispered by his ear, warm breath tickling his skin. Fu Heng narrowed his eyes, giving her a quick once-over. Damn, she was trouble, the hot kind. A smirk touched his lips. He flicked an eyebrow at the bartender. The bartender, taking the cue, mixed a cocktail for the girl. Indulgence and excess, a world drunk on glitz and gold. Fu Heng sat amidst the deafening music, swaying his head, sipping drink after drink, ignoring the girl pressed close to him. She tried to strike up a conversation several times, but he only gave her a cold glance, saying nothing. Discouraged, she realized she wasn't his type, but didn't give up, her movements growing bolder. Yet Fu Hang remained unflappable, like a seasoned player of the game, neither rejecting nor responding, letting her exhaust every trick in the book. The scene quickly drew attention from others in the dance floor's fishing pond. The 2 bottles of expensive liquor in front of Fu Hang spoke volumes. Alone, no private booth expression detached, yet those bottles were worth a fortune. Golden dragon fish, perhaps? More girls began to circle, each opening with the same line. Can you buy me a drink? Fu Hang, like he was toasting at a street food stall, never turned them away. The bartender, used to this routine, glanced at Fu Hang, and seeing no objection, poured drinks and added them to his tab. The girls didn't drink much, careful not to overdo it, often nursing a single glass all night. The atmosphere at the bar grew strange. The quality of girls on the dance floor noticeably dipped, sparking grumbles from the surrounding wolves. But in a place like this, market economics reigned supreme. No drama, no fuss. Everyone knew why the girls flocked to him. Like a top donor in a live stream, if you didn't like it, you could always outspend him. Fu Hang, however, grew sharper with every sip, so much so that even the bartender began to wonder if the drinks were watered down. Fu Hang's glare turned icy, and the bartender, sweating, finally pulled out the good stuff, authentic, unadulterated brandy. The move made the girls' eyes gleam. Don't want me? Fine for now. With his drinking pace, they figured it wouldn't be long before distinctions like high-tech or classic, 100 pounds or 200, blurred into irrelevance. Their efforts doubled, each vying to mentally speed up his descent. Yet Fu Hang only sighed, still tethered to his old, grounded mindset. They say a clever cook can't make a meal without rice, but with rice, the clever cooks come flocking. The girls around him taught him that lesson vividly. In the past, the women he met were carefully curated by the system. Even the schemers and the flawed were polished, balanced, poised. Not these girls, raw and brazen, lacking any pretense of restraint. The ones bold enough to stay were confident, goddesses untouchable to the average guy. Yet here they were, ravenous, stripped of any dignity. Fu Hang's irritation grew, the alcohol failing to numb him, instead stoking the fire in his chest. The flashing neon lights became unbearable, their wild colors searing his eyes, the pounding music blending with screams of release. He felt trapped in a dream, questioning the reality of this ugly world. I knew those girls couldn't satisfy you. A sultry voice purred in his ear, warm breath tickling his skin. Fu Hang turned, startled, meeting a pair of striking blue eyes. Glancing around, he noticed the other girls instinctively backing off. A shark had entered the pond. His lips curled into a smirk, the darkness in his gaze unleashed. Is there a private room? He asked, turning to the bartender who'd been hovering nearby. Yes, sir, the bartender replied, speaking for the first time, pressing the communicator at his collar. Moments later, a bunny girl with a twitching tail appeared. Fu Hang swiped another 100,000 at the bar, grabbed the half-finished vodka, and took Lana's hand. She didn't resist, smiling as she swayed to the music, letting him lead her through the crowd. The private room's door closed, muffling the music to a low hum, leaving an odd sense of emptiness. Fu Hang stared at Lana, his smile turning feral. 2 hours later, he stood at the room's entrance, cigarette in mouth, surprised to see the bunny girl still dutifully waiting. Catching his gaze, she lowered her eyes, blushing, fidgeting with a hint of eagerness. Fu Hang smirked and beckoned her over. Her eyes lit up, and she approached shyly. Payment code, he said coldly. She bit her lip, hesitating, but quickly pulled out her phone to display the code. Fu Hang scanned it, transferring 10,000. No one goes in until she wakes up, he said, voice low. The bunny girl froze, disappointment flickering across her face, but she nodded obediently. Fu Hang walked off, hands in his pockets, heading for the exit. The bunny girl stuck out her tongue, regret gnawing at her. You didn't have to pay. I'd have done it anyway. She stood there, lost in thought, then curiosity took over. Until she wakes up? What did they do? She remembered the 2 bottles of hard liquor he'd brought in. That wild. Glancing around, she nudged the door open, her eyes widening. There on the sofa lay the foreign woman, discarded like a broken doll, barely breathing. Her once dazzling blonde hair looked dull and lifeless under the garish lights. The bunny girl closed the door, her mind racing with wild imaginings. I said I'd do it for free. She stood there, dazed, until a shadow loomed. Startled, she looked up to see the boss, grinning wickedly, accompanied by his personal assistant. Boss! Her body stiffened, memories flooding back like a nightmare. "She's still in there?" the boss asked, his tone dripping with amusement. The bunny girl stayed silent, recognizing that smile. She'd been paid to guard the door, but could she stop him? The boss brushed her aside with a wave, pushing the door open with a leer. He'd noticed the foreign woman the moment she arrived, her presence igniting something primal in him. He'd held back, reminding himself he was a businessman. But when he saw Fu Hang leave alone, leaving her behind, his restraint crumbled. The kind of women who came here, he knew their game. The door closed again. The bunny girl stood outside, torn between pity, guilt, loneliness, and helplessness. The 10,000 in her account felt heavy with shame. But just 15 minutes later, the door opened. The foreign woman emerged, hair disheveled, exhaustion in her eyes, but a lazy, satisfied air about her. "Call an ambulance. They might need it," she said, noticing the bunny girl and flashing a tired smile. Then, with an exaggerated sway of her hips, she sauntered off. The bunny girl stood frozen, confused. Hesitantly, she pushed the door open again and gasped, clapping a hand over her mouth. The untouchable boss and his smug assistant lay sprawled on the floor, limbs twisted at unnatural angles, like broken toys. It was grotesque, yet oddly artistic. Before she could process it, a force shoved her into the room. She stumbled, turning to see a group of burly men staring at her, just as shocked. "You do this?" one of them blurted. She shook her head frantically. "Strange. When they came in, didn't Big Bro leave already?" another said, bewildered. Thud! A fist slammed into the wall. "Damn it. Someone stole our kill. They're not dead yet. We can still claim some credit. Take them. Son of a... Who dares touch Big Bro's woman? I'll break his cough. Damn it. Couldn't he leave one for us?" Fu Hang stepped onto the street, his face cold. The chill of a night wind wrapped around him again. He was still far from at peace inside, but at least some of the frustration had finally found a release. Glancing around, he spotted a black van parked nearby. Without a second thought, he walked over and opened the door, sliding into the back seat without hesitation or wasted motion. The driver and the man riding shotgun both looked like they had just bitten into something sour. "Take me to Yinshu 1, Fu Hang said, eyes closed, voice weary. "I've been drinking. Can't drive." The two men exchanged a long look, visibly annoyed. "We're not a rideshare," the driver said reluctantly. "Does it matter?" Fu Hang didn't open his eyes. "You're headed there anyway. Just give me a lift." The driver's mouth twitched awkwardly. Was their cover really that sloppy? The car started moving. Moments later, a new instruction came through the driver's earpiece. He gave a barely noticeable glance at the rearview mirror. The van cruised through the quiet night. Eventually, the car stopped, engine idling to silence. Fu Hang still hadn't opened his eyes. He looked genuinely asleep, making no move to get out. The driver and his partner exchanged a glance and stepped out of the vehicle. Moments later, the back door opened and a middle-aged man climbed in. "You government guys ever get off work?" Fu Hang said without opening his eyes. "Public service," Chun Xiao muttered, his expression wrinkling at the heavy smell of alcohol. "Sorry for the trouble," Fu Hang said, stretching his neck a little and finally opening his eyes. "If you really feel bad, how about contributing something to society?" Chun Xiao's eyes narrowed, his tone tinged with persuasion. Fu Hang shot him a wary glance. "Your identity's been compromised," Chun Xiao said with a quiet sigh. Fu Hang frowned, pulling out a cigarette. "They took a heavy hit overseas. They're not just going to let it go. They can't move on you openly, but in the shadows." Chun Xiao pulled out a lighter from somewhere and lit Fu Hang's cigarette. "They want revenge." A cold glint flashed in Fu Hang's eyes. He still hadn't cooled down from earlier. "Those bastards want to pay back." He sneered. "I've got all 5 major clients lined up right now. You could call a full house. 5 pillars of support, all mine. Think I can't rip the lid off your coffins?" "We can't predict exactly what they'll do, but they've sent someone," Chun Xiao said, his face dark. "A catfish." Fu Hang scoffed. Finding a worthy opponent these days wasn't easy, especially one he didn't have to hold back on. "No, the captain. A new NPC?" Fu Hang raised a brow. "This one's different. The captain is their chief intelligence officer for the Asia-Pacific region." "He dare enter the country with that kind of background?" Fu Hang frowned. "Is he just asking to be killed?" "Not that simple. Officially, he's the regional head of the Solomon Consortium. He's here under a diplomatic banner." Fu Hang's brows furrowed. He'd heard of the Solomon Consortium, supposedly one of the major overseas powers. Rumor had it they could even influence presidential elections. So what was Chun Xiao telling him this for? "You want me to take him out?" A spark lit up in Fu Hang's eyes. The stars seemed to swirl in his pupils. Xiao looked like he'd just got a migraine. What is wrong with your brain? That shouldn't be too hard. Give me a sniper rifle. I can guarantee a headshot at 2 kilometers. If you can give me an anti-material rifle, like a Barrett, I can improve that range. Fu Heng was getting excited. Ever since he'd last held a gun, he'd been craving the feeling. Taking down a general from miles away. That was what he called honor and heroism. Xiao stared at him in disbelief. Was this really the financial genius who graduated with a major in Chinese literature? What? Is a sniper rifle too much? If it's close quarters, that guy will be surrounded by bodyguards. You'll have a mess on your hands afterward. Fu Heng looked disappointed and started calculating how he'd handle close-range combat. Taking the enemy commander in the chaos of battle still meant cutting down one man at a time, leaving no trace behind. If anything happens to him on domestic soil, it'll be a nightmare to clean up, Xiao warned. Then why are you here? You're not going to tell me to hide, are you? Fu Heng's face fell. Remember the one who drooled? Xiao's gaze sharpened, filled with deeper meaning. Oh, Fu Heng's expression shifted. He thought of those 4 idiots. According to the intel, they suspect you're that guy too. You mean, another performance? Fu Heng perked up. He'd been thinking about the acting gig off and on these past few days, especially since the new script was finalized today. He was itching to get into undercover work again. But this time isn't like before. The captain isn't some idiot. He's not just an individual. He represents the power behind him. Once you step in, getting out won't be so easy. What's in it for me? Fu Heng suddenly grinned. His recent frustration needed an outlet. What do you want? Xiao's eyes narrowed. My family's safety, Fu Heng replied without hesitation. He knew exactly what Xiao meant. He'd beaten the catfish, pretended to be him, and fooled those 4 dumbasses. Most importantly, his brother had looted a fortune last time. If their enemies came looking for revenge, Fu Heng himself wasn't worried. They could send more seals or ghosts. His grandmaster was itching for a fight. But if they went after his family, his mother, or Yuchu, we're already working on that, Xiao said, brows drawing together. Not enough. Fu Heng's eyes narrowed. If the threat really came from overseas, then the current protection around his mother and Yuchu wouldn't cut it. Xiao nodded silently, sighing inwardly. Then he started counting in his head. Just how many women did this bastard have again? That night, in the community where Qin Yuchu lived, a few new units were mysteriously sold. Manager Lu, known for her viral dance moves, was over the moon. But in Unit 809, Fu Wanqing had no idea about her soon-arrived neighbors. Even if she knew, she wouldn't have had the energy to care. The bedroom lights were off. She sat quietly at the head of the bed, head tilted as she stared at the sleeping old Wang, who was already snoring softly. But her thoughts kept drifting to that weathered, distant, wrinkled face. She couldn't imagine what he'd been through all these years. The last time she saw him, he had been full of vitality and that roguish, handsome grin. Now, he was limping and aged. He looked even older than old Wang. And yet, he was only a year older than her. When their eyes met earlier today, she saw so much in them. Loss, regret, apology, guilt. He hid it well, but she still saw it. It hadn't been like their last meeting in the hotel lobby. Back then, he was only shocked, stunned, and disbelieving. But today, his eyes had her in them. So, you still remember me, don't you? Then where have you been all these years? Was it really like her son said, abroad? Or, did you fall into the underworld? Dawn? For some reason, a smile appeared on Fu Wanqing's face. Their son actually calls him brother now? Oomph. That's what you get for treating me like that back then. You told me to wait, but I waited over 20 years and heard nothing. I've already waited 20 years. I can't wait any longer. A complex mix of emotions filled room 809. Upstairs in room 909, however, it was exceptionally peaceful and serene. The bedroom light had long been extinguished. Only the entryway light above the shoe cabinet cast a soft glow, appearing especially warm in the silent night. A small note was tucked under something on the shoe cabinet, its elegant handwriting looking lively and charming. There's kanji in the thermos, smiley face. The night sky enveloped the earth, but not everywhere was so peaceful and serene this night. In Yinshu Binjiang, Shen Qingluan leaned quietly against the French window, her smooth, bare feet on the fluffy carpet. Her silk nightgown accentuated her exquisitely slender waist. Shen Qingluan's gaze was complex, a hint of confusion mingling with its dreamy quality. She looked at her calves, peeking out from under her nightgown, and gently caressed them. Yinshu Binjiang. How many times had she dreamed of it? Yet now that she was actually living here, why couldn't she feel a trace of joy? Not a shred of satisfaction? Instead, her heart felt empty. Slowly raising her eyes, she looked towards the distant penthouse where a light had just switched on. To you, what exactly am I? A long time passed. Only when that light went out did Shen Qingluan turn her gaze to her phone on the side. Opening her social media feed, her eyes fell once more on that comment. If life were only like the first time we met, why then the autumn wind to grieve a painted fan? He's quite the wordsmith. Shen Qingluan raised her hand, gently touching her delicate lips, recalling that brief, yet profound memory. That was my first kiss. Shen Qingluan suddenly smiled, a somewhat bitter smile. Then, she opened her contacts, not caring what time it was, and sent a message directly. Asleep yet? Not yet, CEO Shen. Are you satisfied with the new house? The reply, from property manager Lu, came back almost instantly. It's all right. Help me find another property. As you command, CEO Shen. Do you have any specific requirements? Shen Qingluan tilted her head, took another deep look at that penthouse, and then typed in the name of a residential complex. Manager Lu on the other end stared at the complex's name, momentarily stunned. What the hell? Was there some big project nearby? Otherwise, why would a property that had never sold, well, suddenly become a hot commodity? If so, should he also snag one for himself? It felt like this property was about to skyrocket in value. Otherwise, why would the CEO of Hengyu Group want to buy it? She had just gotten a place in Yinshu Binjiang. After sending the message, Shen Qingluan put down her phone, paying it no more mind. The face mask she was wearing was about to dry. But as she walked to the bathroom, she suddenly paused. Lana? Wasn't she supposed to come over today? Suspicious, she glanced into the guest bedroom again and saw no signs of anyone having returned. Uneasy, she went back to the French window, carefully scrutinizing the now dark penthouse. No, I need to buy a telescope tomorrow and set it up. Of course, the most conflicted person this night had to be Fong Tiandai. In the hotel suite, she had forcibly kept the two makeup artists from the film crew because she felt she might have underestimated Zhuge Yun. That was the boss's woman. The boss's woman. The publicly acknowledged main consort. How dare you? Pew. Pew? Oh my god. And then, you actually wanted to stay behind to take care of the drunken Yanin? What were you trying to do? In the hotel corridor, Fong Tiandai warily watched the innocent-looking little cutie beside her. It's so late, and my place is very far. I have to be on set tomorrow, Zhuge Yun said, head bowed, still looking reluctant to leave. Get rid of those strange ideas. Let me tell you, if you two end up in the same bed in the future, I don't care what you get up to. But tonight, you better behave. Fong Tiandai really wanted to lose her temper, but struggled to control herself. She was just an employee, but the one before her was in all likelihood also one of the boss's women. She just wasn't sure if this was boss's woman no. 6 foot or no. 7 foot. Zhuge Yun rolled her eyes speechlessly. Having spent so much time together, she genuinely felt Sister Tiandai's care. She really was concerned about her. No longer struggling, she dejectedly followed Fong Tiandai downstairs and got into the company-provided van. Looking at the stern, unsmiling black-clothed driver in front, she suddenly thought of that mysterious and terrifying boss. He was still terrifying, even more so than that Master Duan. Not just her, but even those thuggish men in black were terrified of him. She could sense that. Even that Master Duan seemed a bit afraid of him. But still, being with the boss was truly blissful. The valiant and heroic Sister Yanin, the cold and domineering Sister Weiyang, the gentle and charming Sister Qingluan, and the innocent yet Sundra little Sister Yuchu. A youthful face with a mature fi. Who could refuse it, Sundra lowly? She really hadn't meant to do it today. It was completely involuntary, an irresistible urge. This was practically heaven on earth. Involuntarily, Zhuge Yun peeked at Fong Tiandai, who was resting beside her with closed eyes. That sentence, if you two end up in the same bed in the future, I don't care what you get up to, made her heart race. Suddenly, she felt as though she wasn't so resistant to the idea of serving a man anymore. No, that wasn't right. Only if the man was the boss. She even felt a tiny thrill of anticipation. The vehicle soon arrived at her apartment building. Just as she was about to bid Fong Tiandai farewell, she found she couldn't open the car door. Wait, don't get out, the driver in the front seat said, his expression serious as he vigilantly scanned the empty street. Zhuge Yun pouted. This was the price of fame. She could no longer do as she pleased like before. Fong Tiandai also opened her eyes slightly. She had actually dozed off for a bit. But to the surprise of both women, after scanning the street, the driver started the car again. What's wrong? Fong Tiandai asked, puzzled. This place is being watched, the driver replied, icily. This driver, it turned out, was a former professional pickpocket. Due to his criminal record, he couldn't join 010, but he was quick-witted. On the recommendation of the bald Long-Out Yin, he was assigned as Zhuge Yun's full-time driver. A pickpocket. Besides nimble fingers, what's most important? Eyes that see in all directions and ears that hear everything. It was a natural professional instinct, honed through countless anti-pickpocketing operations. Damn it, these paparazzi have such keen noses, Fong Tiandai complained angrily. So where are we going now? Zhuge Yun still looked innocent, but a glimmer of anticipation shone in her eyes. You can crash at my place for the night. You're practically an A-lister now. It's not suitable for you to keep living here. Tomorrow, I'll report to the company and find you a separate place. Fong Tiandai glanced at Zhuge Yun, silencing her before she could continue. Hold on, I'll report to the boss and have someone come over to handle this. It'll be quick. The driver put on his Bluetooth headset and made a call. It's no use. Since the news has already leaked, the paparazzi will come wave after wave. Besides, we can't afford to offend these paparazzi. We often need them, Fong Tiandai explained, but the driver's call had already connected. What's going on? Lao Duan leaned lazily against the sofa. His long years in the underworld meant he slept very little at night, often only drifting off as dawn approached. Today, his mind was restless, and he felt no desire to sleep at all. His trusted confidant, however, dutifully stayed by his side. Zhuge Yun's place is being watched by paparazzi, the confidant said, holding up his phone and tilting his head. That's perfectly normal. Ignore them. These paparazzi are different from thugs. You can't use underworld methods on them. Lao Duan shrugged nonchalantly, his fountain pen continuing to race across the desk. He needed something to distract himself, like writing a script outline. All right, might as well let Zhuge Yun stay at that other house. I won't be able to live there for a while, and it's just sitting empty anyway, Lao Duan suddenly said, looking up as if he'd thought of something. You son of a bitch, I'll let you call me brother. Promised you a bond for this life and the next, offered you gallons of strong liquor and the freedom to roam the world. You like girls, don't you? Well, consider this daddy sending them your way. A ruthless glint suddenly flashed in Lao Duan's eyes. Stay over there. An amused look appeared on the confidant's face. It's safer there. At least the paparazzi can't get in, Lao Duan shrugged. The driver, however, nodded seriously and then hung up the phone. The boss said you should go stay at Master Duan's house for now. It's safer there. Master Duan, is that appropriate? Fong Tiandai hesitated slightly. She'd seen plenty of the ins and outs of these big shots. Relax, the proprietress lives upstairs, and the old madam lives there too. The driver was a sharp one and immediately picked up on Fong Tiandai's concerns. Sister Yuchu? Zhuge Yun, however, suddenly perked up. Fong Tiandai's expression fell. This seems even more serious than I was worried about. The van slowly pulled away. Inside a commercial vehicle parked by the roadside, two young men exchanged glances. What the hell? Don't tell me they spotted us. Holy crap. The guys from Team 3 said the people around Fu Hang are all kinds of intense, like undercover sentries, no different from security guards. I didn't believe it at first. Are they nuts? They ask us for protection, but then they're on guard against us. So, should we follow? The driver asked, exasperated. Report it first, the young man in the passenger seat said, waving his hand and picking up the communicator. However, 20 minutes later, the two young men, still waiting on standby, received a call from their colleagues in Team 3. Come on over. The hot pot at the neighborhood entrance is pretty good. We're just waiting for you guys. Also, tell the guys taking over your shift to report directly to the complex tomorrow. The next morning, Qin Yuchu tossed the note from the shoe cabinet into the toilet, cleaned out the porridge from the thermos, and went downstairs, full of energy. School was already out for the holidays, but the company wasn't. Not only that, but the workload had increased. Due to continuous overseas market expansion, the company's business volume was growing almost daily. Today, she even had a meeting scheduled with an overseas conglomerate to discuss cooperation, and word was their top leader was coming in person. Wow, the academic ace is getting busy. Qin Yuchu palmed her little fist in the elevator, cheering herself on for her ambitious goals. Hung you? What's Hung you? Give me 5 years, and even if we don't go public, I'll still wipe the floor with you. Qin Yuchu thought indignantly. But as soon as she stepped out of the building, she keenly sensed something different. A mahjong room? That wasn't there yesterday. How come there were 3 security guards now? More cars, too. She stood rooted to the spot, her gaze involuntarily drawn to the familiar commercial vehicle. The female driver was already in the driver's seat, holding a cup of soy milk, while the sturdy-looking man was squatting by the car, smoking. Seeing her emerge, he quickly tossed away his cigarette and got into the driver's seat. So, this was all you're doing? A smile appeared on Qin Yochu's face. She gave a haughty flick of her eyebrows and strode briskly towards the GT900. Not bad, not bad. I'll let you off for not coming home last night. For now, let me prepare a surprise for you. The GT900 roared out of the residential complex. The three security guards exchanged a look, then simultaneously glanced towards the building entrance. A van slowly pulled up to the entrance, and Zhuge Yun, wearing a mask and hat, hurried out. Just before getting into the van, however, he couldn't help but look up at the floors above. Son, get Mom some more melon seeds, the supermarket proprietress said, sitting on a small stool at the entrance, her eyes sharp and bright. The young man behind the counter rolled his eyes. Be professional, professional, the proprietress glared at him irritably. Yes, Mom. The young man sighed resignedly, took a bag of melon seeds from under the counter, tossed it over, and then meticulously made a note in his ledger. If you keep eating like this, a month's salary won't cover it. You're actually writing it down? The proprietress watched the van drive away, then abruptly stood up. You didn't say we could expense this, did you? The young man muttered under his breath. Hey, we're out here braving the elements. What's wrong with having a few snacks? That kind of behavior could be classified as embezzlement of state assets. The proprietress's mouth twitched, her face a picture of disbelief. You haven't forgotten where I was seconded from, have you, Mom? The young man's lips curved upwards in an amused smirk as he looked at her. The proprietress was speechless. Damn it, I forgot this kid was transferred from the internal affairs department of the neighboring province. All right, it's on me. A resigned sigh came through the earpiece. Oh, the boss is personally on surveillance. The proprietress's eyes were wide with astonishment. Today's situation is special. Everyone, stay sharp. Chun Xiao's serious voice sounded again. The earpieces instantly fell silent as everyone returned to their posts, entering a state of quiet vigilance. Fu Heng woke up in his 2-4-meter-wide bed, blinking his eyes groggily. Another bland, tasteless day for a capitalist. This massive bed, it seemed, hadn't seen any action yet. Involuntarily, Fu Heng's gaze drifted towards the bathroom, which was about the size of his old rental apartment. The bathtub, however, had seen some action. Fu Heng's eyes were still hazy as he recalled the system notification that had popped up before he fell asleep yesterday. Li Weiyang, 96. 17%. That dropped 0.1% had climbed back up. Ing Yanan, negligible. This bug probably needed a system patch. Shen Qingluan. Her momentum was strong, practically hitting the daily limit yesterday, reaching 62. 11%. All of this was relatively normal. But Zhuge Yun had actually risen to 53. 99%? What was going on? It had more than doubled. What happened yesterday? What had he said to her? What had he done? Nothing, right? She'd come to offer a toast, and he hadn't even drunk it. Could it be because of Bayubiyu? Fu Heng felt something was off, but he had no proof. And then, Lana, 40%. Still no decimal points, a clean 5-point increase. Seriously, did that foreign woman really go up 5 points per session? Fu Heng's mind was a little unsettled. If this trend continued, wouldn't that also count as a bug? Stable improvement? Should he consider investing something in this? Up to this point, Fu Heng's intentions regarding this foreigner were extremely straightforward. The scumbag hadn't even considered her a client, but purely a tool. Fu Heng stood before the mirror, frowning at the scattered red marks on his body. Trophies of war and battle scars. A night had passed, yet even with the Grandmaster's terrifying healing abilities, they hadn't fully faded, a testament to the ferocity of yesterday's fight. It looked like he still couldn't go home today. Fu Heng rubbed at them vigorously with his fingers, only to find they weren't coming off. He sighed in frustration, like a sage in a moment of post-codal clarity, repenting past transgressions. But his mind couldn't help replaying last night's conversation with Chun Xiao. What's the deal with that foreign chick? You're asking me? The disdain in Chun Xiao's eyes was palpable, a deep-seated loathing. A foreign girl suddenly appears in my bed, and you guys aren't the least bit worried? Fu Heng's audacity was shameless and unapologetic. Chun Xiao's lips trembled, speechless. She met Shen Qingluan while Shun was vacationing on an island. According to the entry records from that time, it was a chance encounter. Chun Xiao took a deep breath. His ex-girlfriend's best friend? You actually went there. And then, I'm telling you, we're only responsible for your protection. We're not your hired private investigators. We also have an obligation to protect the legal rights of other citizens. For example, their right to privacy. Chun Xiao's eyelid twitched incessantly. She's not a citizen of our country, is she? Fu Heng raised an eyebrow. Lana, Carterina, Icelandic, a finance PhD candidate at Hajin University. While you were stirring up trouble overseas, this young woman made a killing amidst the chaos and then started traveling the world. Chun Xiao recited the information mechanically, a look of utter dejection on his face. Damn it, what do I owe you? Then again, I do owe you quite a bit. A PhD candidate? Fu Heng was dumbfounded. You're telling me that wild, uninhibited woman is a finance PhD? What do you think? Chun Xiao rolled his eyes. No, seriously. A finance PhD from Hajin suddenly gets close to me, and you guys aren't the least bit curious? Fu Heng felt this matter needed to be taken seriously. He was, after all, a genius the financial world hadn't seen in a millennium, a pillar of the state, the cornerstone of our great nation, the future linchpin of the financial industry. Assistant Qin relaying Professor Li's objective assessment. I wouldn't be surprised if the Queen of Great Britain ended up in your bed. So, you're saying I've actually brought honor to our country? If you could get her to stay in the country, wholeheartedly devoted, then that would truly be a meritorious achievement. Chun Xiao was utterly exasperated. In his mind, Lana Carterina's detailed profile surfaced. Just looking at the data, this girl was like an overseas version of Qin Yuchu. Born in an orphanage, her life seemed to be on easy mode. She steamrolled through everything, rarely met a match, and her achievements were all on record. Back in front of the mirror, Fu Heng pulled out his phone and opened the photo of her back, saved in his encrypted hidden album. Damn, that figure is incredible. Judging by Chun Xiao's attitude, Lana's background must have been thoroughly vetted. If she truly had ulterior motives or a shady past, the authorities wouldn't be this nonchalant. So should he invest? Deep down, Fu Heng was somewhat averse to overseas entanglements. Shaking his head hard, Fu Heng permanently deleted the photo, then slipped on a shirt, stylishly tying a silk scarf at the collar. The scarf was a gift from Qin Yuchu. Looking at himself in the mirror again, a rare flicker of self-loathing appeared in Fu Heng's eyes. Pulling out his phone again, Fu Heng opened his chat with Qin Yuchu but hesitated, unsure what to say. I'll be there for the meeting with the Solomon Group today. After a long pause, Fu Heng sent the message without any preamble. Qin Yuchu, who had just arrived at the office, heard her phone chime and immediately checked it. Fu Heng's calls and messages had a specific ringtone. Staring at the message, Qin Yuchu was momentarily stunned. Fu Heng was coming to the company? To participate in the negotiations? A smile gradually spread across Assistant Qin's face. Is it because the head of the Solomon Group is coming, and he's worried I can't handle it? Roger that, boss, Qin Yuchu replied instantly, adding an emoji of a fist and palm salute. The meeting's in the afternoon, right? This morning, prepare a cooperation agreement. Think big and be bold. How big? She typed back, adding a dumbfounded emoji. When friends come from afar, we show them no mercy. Qin Yuchu's eyes widened. Fu Heng meant he wanted to take on Solomon. Slowly putting down her phone, Qin Yuchu felt a fire ignite in her veins. The surprise I have for you. Looks like I need to start preparing it sooner. Fu Heng stared at his phone for a long time. When even the typing indicator disappeared, he pursed his lips, speechless. But before he could type anything else, his phone pinged. He exited the chat and saw a long unseen avatar. Zhang Xiaowan's wontons. Just those few words. No preamble, no follow-up, just like how he discussed work moments ago. For a moment, Fu Heng felt a bit dazed. Work? Such a distant memory. He'd almost forgotten that this was supposed to be his job. He raised a hand and scratched his chin, then replied with 2 letters. Okay. Then he dialed Baldy Long's number. Buy 2 bowls of Zhang Xiaowan's wontons, the one on North City Road. One with no scallions and no cilantro, the other an extra-large portion. Then come pick me up. Put the one without scallions in an insulated container. Seriously? Now that the cards were on the table, even if he continued to clock in at work, things couldn't possibly be the same as before, right? Back then, it was just his scarcity mindset, unable to break through class barriers. Of course, Fu Heng's own explanation was, it was an attitude towards life and work. Right away, boss. Baldy Long's reply was exceptionally crisp, his tone brimming with energy and fighting spirit. Ever since distinguishing himself at the university yesterday and having a heart-to-heart with that soccer team captain, Baldy Long's grounding had been lifted. He had proactively resigned from his positions as artist department manager at Weiyang Entertainment and head of 010, applying to join Fu Heng's security team. However, Fu Hang had rejected this proposal. Baldy Long was now Fu Hang's personal assistant, the very close, always by his side kind. Not for any particular reason. Fu Hang simply didn't want to miss out on this long Out Yin's character development. The man was a rare talent, on par with legendary strategists of old. Indeed, Little Guang was always reliable. Fu Hang hadn't even finished putting on his shoes when a text from Little Guang arrived, saying he was downstairs. Fu Hang hesitated slightly. Didn't I tell you to get the wontons first? With a mix of confusion and slight annoyance, Fu Hang put on his shoes and went downstairs. An orderly convoy of cars was parked downstairs. A line of men in black stood solemnly by the car doors. Seeing Fu Hang approach, they made no move, instead subtly glancing towards Baldy. Baldy, too, was staring intently at Fu Hang, needing to read his micro-expressions to judge whether to greet him. Past experience had taught him, "Morning, boss," wasn't something you could say just any time. Said at the right moment, it was a welcome addition. Said at the wrong one, it could make things worse. And indeed, Fu Hang's confused expression made him realize that silence was the right call. Baldy Long straightened up slightly, and the men in black instantly became more imposing, their posture even more upright. "Where are the wontons?" Fu Hang, however, ignored the details of the men in black, staring blankly at Baldy. But before Baldy could answer, the roar of a high-powered motorcycle echoed from the complex entrance, a rider approaching at speed, kicking up dust. "The wontons are here," Baldy Long said with a smile. With a subtle flick of his finger, one of the men in black strode forward and took the food container from the delivery rider. Fu Hang's expression was blank. "It can be done like this. I'm such a damn simp. Just a moment ago, I was so proud of myself for thinking of outsourcing the project, and this bald guy already knows about multi-layer subcontracting?" Fu Hang, his face cold, took the wontons passed down the line from Baldy Long and sat expressionlessly in the car Baldy Long held open for him. "Didn't I bloody send you to study law? Did you also have a sociology professor giving you private lessons?" The motorcade started. The most luxurious food delivery squad in history, like the great wheels of an era, slowly moved forward. Below Hengyu International's office building, a large crowd had already gathered, including many of the company's senior and junior executives. They were there for one reason. Today, Hengyu was to receive an extremely distinguished client, Jack Solomon, the head of Solomon Group's Asia-Pacific region. Hengyu Group had weathered many storms. Although the new president's assistant had worked wonders after the new president took office, stabilizing the volatile stock price with a few slick maneuvers, the various chain reactions from changes in equity were still silently affecting this once dominant group. Solomon's arrival was undoubtedly a shot in the arm for everyone at the company. The Solomon Group's business delegation, personally led by Mr. Jack Solomon, the president of their branch, had been a hot topic for days. Speculation about the trip was rampant across all sectors of society, yet the conclusions were surprisingly uniform. Solomon Group had suffered heavy losses in the recent stock market crash and was now keen on developing the Eastern market, strengthening cooperation, and promoting economic development. This delegation's visit was clearly a crucial strategic move by Solomon Group in the current economic climate. Through in-depth exchanges and cooperation with the Eastern market, Solomon Group hoped to diversify its business and inject new vitality into its recovery. Simultaneously, this would create new opportunities for economic growth in both regions, fostering broader exchanges and collaboration. Thus, word had long since spread that Solomon was coming with utmost sincerity and substantial orders. The only surprise was that Solomon's first stop was Hengyu. The shareholders and executives were beaming, their opinion of their new chairwoman shifting once again. The overseas plunder had occurred after the Hengyu stock war, meaning most of them had missed out. The losses from that back and forth had to be more than just a few $100 million, right? When Shen Qingluan became chairwoman of the board, many had been deeply dissatisfied, which was why the stock price had fluctuated again after she took office. Many shareholders had cut their losses and bailed. Fortunately, Lana, the presidential assistant, had turned the tide. Using methods almost comparable to whoever had targeted Hengyu before, she quickly stabilized the stock price and even cleared out some shareholders with ulterior motives. Who would have thought that their fortunes would turn so quickly? Solomon himself was actually coming to them. For a moment, the executives waiting at the entrance looked at their glamorous new president with new eyes. This woman, she was no simpleton. A luxurious motorcade appeared, the flags on the lead car announcing the arrival of their awaited distinguished guests. The reception staff, spirits high, readied their most enthusiastic welcome for the honored visitors. The motorcade stopped in front of the company building. The person in charge of reception paused. The cars had stopped rather far off, hadn't they? He hesitated, glancing at his superior. Even if they parked a bit far, shouldn't we make a move? Guess from afar, we should go and greet them, right? His superior looked to his superior, who in turn looked at Shen Qingluan. But Shen Qingluan merely gave the motorcade a cool glance, then silently lowered her head again, scrolling through her phone. The executives' hearts tightened. As realization dawned, they secretly broke a sweat over their new president's decision. None of them were fools. From where Solomon's motorcade had parked, they understood the power play. They tried to assert dominance right off the bat. "We've come all this way, and you don't even come out to greet us properly?" was the implied message. Westerners seemed to enjoy these childish games, as if such tactics could highlight their noble status, create psychological pressure, and allow them to seize the upper hand in negotiations. But this was Solomon, wasn't it? Treating Hingyu like this. Wasn't that to be expected? They weren't even in the same league, were they? Yet if the president didn't move, it wouldn't be right for them to go forward either. For a moment, the scene was a stalemate. Interesting. Is that woman Shen Qingluan? Inside the luxury business van, Jack Solomon coldly watched the group of Easterners standing there dumbly, showing no intention of a distant welcome, a playful smirk on his face. "Yes," his assistant replied softly, his gaze towards the Hengyu group equally disdainful. "Who is that woman?" Jack Solomon's eyes suddenly lit up, drawn to the stunning blonde beauty beside Shen Qingluan. My God, how could such an unparalleled beauty exist in this world? He, who had savored all the world's fragrances, was utterly captivated. Her pure blonde hair was especially dazzling, so conspicuous amidst a sea of black hair, like an angel's radiance, bestowing compassion upon the world. In that instant, Jack even forgot the purpose of his trip. That woman is Lana Katerina. She's an assistant Shen Qingluan recently hired, a PhD candidate at Hajin University, majoring in finance. An assistant? Jack's eyes brightened further. An assistant was good. An assistant could do many things. He didn't care if that other man was a catfish trying to stir things up. This assistant, he was going to have. "Let's go. We'll head over," Jack said, flashing a brilliant smile as he opened his car door first. As Jack stepped out, it was like a signal. The doors of the motorcade opened one after another, and a large contingent, old and young, swarmed out. A gust of wind swept past, but couldn't diminish Solomon's aura. That sharp, aristocratic air, that noble temperament unique to the elite, pressed down on the Hengyu crowd like an overwhelming force. The reception team members' smiles were exceptionally bright. A few employees serving as translators subconsciously bowed slightly and jogged towards the arriving guests. Lana, head down, was also engrossed in her phone, still playing that same mobile game. She was jungling, her KDA an impressive 19-0-8, and she was about to push the high ground. But suddenly, Lana put down her phone and looked toward the other end of the street. "Didn't you say it was a food delivery?" Lana glanced suspiciously at Shen Qingluan. "Who says a Rolls-Royce can't deliver food?" Shen Qingluan blinked her alluring eyes, a smile finally gracing her face, her standard, iconic, gentle smile. The translators rushing forward hadn't even managed to blurt out their "nice to meet you" when they, too, were distracted by another motorcade speeding in from the opposite direction. Watching that imposing convoy approach at full speed, showing no signs of slowing, they instinctively froze mid-stride. The roar of engines drew everyone's attention. Jack's bodyguards tensed, forming a protective circle around him. "Move!" Jack's voice was ice-cold as he shoved a bodyguard aside. "Nothing's going to happen to me here." But his gaze towards the approaching convoy was filled with suspicion. Could it be another corporation, having heard he was visiting Hengyu, trying to poach him? It wasn't an uncommon occurrence for him. After all, it was Solomon. The Hengyu reception team exchanged bewildered glances. Where did this aggressive-looking convoy come from? Were they here to snatch their guest? The new convoy, arrogant and imposing, brazenly cut in front of Solomon's vehicles, blocking the Solomon delegation like a solid wall. Hengyu's executives immediately grew anxious. This looked like a clear attempt to steal their client. They looked worriedly at Shen Qingluan, only to see her flash a gentle smile as she finally started walking forward on those long legs of hers. The executives followed her at a measured pace, yet an imposing aura began to emanate from them. Poaching? They like to see who in Hanqiang dared to openly try and steal a deal from Hengyu. These executives had all been personally mentored by Wang Taijun, and each carried a trace of his fierceness. The first to come into view was a man with a large, bald head. His eyes held a brutality not typically found in the business world. A casual glance from him after stepping out of the car was enough to make Hung Yu's building momentum falter. Damn, someone thought. Are they from the underworld? Not businessmen. The reception team's pace noticeably slowed, and they drifted a little further away from Shen Qingluan. Meanwhile, the Solomon delegation stood their ground, watching the sudden appearance of the new convoy with amusement. This poaching drama would only serve to increase their perceived value. Only Jack, amidst the crowd, narrowed his eyes, a hint of suspicion in them. The bald man got out, and with a rustle, a troop of formidable men in black suits lined up neatly outside the cars. It was under this intense scrutiny that Fu Hang slowly stepped out of his car. "Qingluan, your wontons," Fu Hang said, holding up a food container, his face radiating warmth and affection. This long-overdue delivery run put Fu Hang in a pleasant mood. What kind of damn days had he been having lately? Showers of bullets, storms of blood, flashing blades, and flying swords. Rivers of gore. If only life could always be like the first meeting. He suddenly missed those simpler days of being hopelessly devoted. Simple and pure, slogging away every day for a measly 100,000, like an emotionless machine, a mindless workhorse. Sigh. Those 100,000 a day, times were gone forever. Now he had to suffer through 600,000 a day, feeling utterly overwhelmed, stressed to the max, and completely drained. I still prefer you on your e-bike. Without that yellow vest. Even the wontons don't seem as tasty, Shen Qingluan said with a sweet smile, her voice like the gentle, melodious gurgle of a warm spring. Should I come by bike tomorrow then? Fu Hang took a step forward, crossing the safe social distance, his gaze fixed unswervingly on Shen Qingluan's eyes. It's windy. Shen Qingluan's eyes were soft with affection, a hint of a playful smile on her lips. She quietly took the food container, but perhaps her movement was a bit too large. As she took it, her fingers brushed against the back of Fu Hang's hand. A fleeting touch, a silent tease. But before she could pull her hand back, Fu Hang grasped it firmly. Are you worried about me? Fu Hang stepped closer again, almost face to face with Shen Qingluan, his gaze still locked on her alluring eyes. There were some things he needed to confirm. Shen Qingluan was flustered by this sudden intimacy. Her eyes flickered for a moment, but she forced herself not to struggle or pull away, though her cheeks flushed a deep red. With so many people watching, she truly felt a little uncomfortable. Don't deliver tomorrow, Shen Qingluan murmured, looking down with a cute pout, yet her body naturally leaned forward, her cheek resting against Fu Hang's shoulder. Then I won't come tomorrow, Fu Hang said, a smile playing on his lips. He released her hand and surprisingly turned to leave. Hey, what about mine? Lana's voice called out from behind him. First, my name isn't Hey. Second, you didn't place an order. Fu Hang didn't even turn his head as he got into the car and closed the door. The men in black moved with disciplined precision. The convoy started slowly, then quickly drove away. From beginning to end, Fu Hang hadn't spared the group of foreigners a single glance. The Solomon delegation looked at each other, utterly confused. What was going on? Did they show up with all that fanfare just to act out a scene from a romance drama and then leave? Were they just here for an early morning PDA session? Only Jack had a slow smile spreading across his lips. He was sure of it now. This man was the catfish. Jack understood. He now felt even more confident about the upcoming negotiations with Hengyu. He slowly raised his eyes, standing coolly, waiting for the Hengyu reception team to approach. He was even mentally preparing his words, ready to admonish them for the disrespectful scene moments ago. We are the distinguished Solomon. Treating us like this is quite impolite, you know. You'll need to make amends for this, won't you? For instance, perhaps that assistant. However, the smirk had barely formed on Jack's face before it froze, because he saw Shen Qingluan, after watching the convoy depart, also turn around and walk back toward her building. Similarly, from beginning to end, she hadn't given him a single glance. What the? The reception team was dumbfounded too. What was happening? Was this some tactic orchestrated by their CEO, disrupting the opponent's rhythm with a romance drama scene? That was a seriously unconventional move. CEO Shen Solomon, the head of the reception team, finally couldn't hold back any longer and stepped forward to remind Shen Qingluan. He thought, this has gone far enough. Let's not actually tick them off. We'll have to sacrifice a lot at the negotiation table otherwise. Solomon, Shen Qingluan paused, as if only just noticing the group of foreigners standing in the wind in the distance. Take them to the conference room. I'll head over after I finish my breakfast. The wontons are getting cold. Shen Qingluan offered a gentle smile, even provocatively waving the food container at Lana. looking as proud as a young pioneer on their first day with a red scarf. Shen Qingluan walked steadily, but her pace was quick. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared through the doorway. As if I actually care. You go get me a sandwich. Lana glared angrily at Shen Qingluan's show-off retreating back, then spun around to face the head of the reception team. Me? The reception head was utterly bewildered. That's Solomon, you know? Are you people serious? So you all waited here since early this morning just for a food delivery? He mused. Speaking of which, who was that delivery guy just now? He looked incredibly imposing. However, he quickly noticed that the executives behind him had, with tacit understanding, turned and followed Shen Qingluan inside. Anyone who could secure an executive position during Wang Tiejuan's era and still hold it after all the company's upheavals was bound to be a sharp cookie. They didn't understand what was happening, but they knew what to do. A competent executive must unconditionally support their boss's decisions, even if they know the decision is terrible. In an instant, the bustling reception team dwindled to just a few solitary staff members from the secretarial office. You, please take Solomon's distinguished guest to the conference room. I'll go get Assistant Katerina a sandwich. He then added, Hey, does anyone have an e-bike? The sandwiches from Peninsula are good, but it's a bit far. If I walk, they'll be cold by the time I get back. The head of the reception team had quickly grasped the situation. It was the same old story. Whether Solomon's deal went through or not, the reception team's pay wouldn't see much of a change. Even future bonuses or project profit sharing wouldn't concern them. The young man he pointed at was stunned. He was just an intern, wasn't he? Only yesterday, he'd been bragging to his classmates about getting a chance to see the renowned Solomon. And now, in a blink, he was supposed to be in charge of the reception? Holy crap, this was bragging rights for ages. Even if Yu didn't hire him after the internship, this on his resume? Absolutely stellar. Solely responsible for receiving Jack Solomon, chairman of the Solomon Group. The intern, completely oblivious to anything being off, abruptly straightened his spine, his face radiating an almost fanatical, do-or-die enthusiasm. The head of the reception team rode off on his electric scooter. The intern, with an energetic stride and mangling a foreign language, enthusiastically charged towards Solomon's inspection team. Jack's face turned ugly. He understood what was happening, but he was utterly baffled. Good heavens! Wasn't China supposed to be the celestial empire, a land of profound etiquette? Why this appalling lack of courtesy? Shen Qingluan, did you really think that just because you're Catfish's woman, you could ignore me? Heh, Catfish number 3. You probably don't even realize apocalypse is finished. Jack's expression grew grim. If not for other objectives on this trip, he would have turned on his heel and left without a second thought, then proceeded to mercilessly crush this small, naive Eastern company, so blind to the world outside. What's your position? One of the translators from Solomon's delegation, unable to bear the intern's butchered foreign tongue any longer, snapped in Chinese. Lung Qinghan, intern reception team 3, secretariat, Hengyu group. He then, rather unnecessarily, added the Lung for cold, the Qing for clear and cold, and the Han for, well, chillingly cold. The intern introduced himself with utmost seriousness, determined not to miss any chance to make an impression. If they remember my name, that would be incredible. Maybe I can even add them on WeChat? Holy hell, that would be beyond awesome, he thought. After hearing the intern's lengthy introduction, Jack indeed felt a chill. But surprisingly, the anger on his face subsided, replaced by a gentle smile. Lead the way. Jack was curious to see what other games this audacious woman, who clearly didn't know her place, had up her sleeve. Inside Hengyu International's conference room, the atmosphere remained decidedly odd. They had been waiting for half an hour, yet aside from a few secretaries and interns pouring water, not a single executive from Hengyu had shown up. Their translator, unable to hold back, finally asked what on earth Hengyu thought they were doing. Young Lung, now also sensing the discourtesy, hurried out to find out. However, the message he returned with was one the translator hesitated to even convey. President Chun has just finished her breakfast, but her executive assistant's sandwich has only just arrived. They'll come over once the assistant has finished eating. Jack's fist clenched, then slowly unclenched. As the head of intelligence for the Asia-Pacific region, the captain, as he was known, naturally understood Chinese perfectly. His eyes, narrowed slightly, glinted with a dangerous light. In his mind, Jack had already meticulously planned out the future career, or lack thereof, for this sandwich-eating executive assistant. So, she likes sandwiches, does she? I like them too. My first demand, when negotiations begin, will be you. Meanwhile, Fu Hang's motorcade took a detour, heading straight for Weiyang Entertainment. He needed to get to the film set and find out why that little Spitfire was part of the production crew. And what was the deal with Zhuge Yun? Her affection points had actually doubled. But Fu Heng, sitting in the car, wore a slightly puzzled expression, replaying his recent encounter with Shen Qingluan in his mind. Just as he'd suspected, Shen Qingluan hadn't batted an eye at the sight of his luxurious motorcade. Her line, "I still prefer the way you look on an electric scooter," was pure gold. That placid smile, those gentle eyes. Even now, Fu Heng felt as if the subtle, manipulative charm she exuded still lingered, a bittersweet aftertaste. But his subsequent probing had revealed something else entirely. She hadn't pulled away, but her eyes had clearly, instinctively flinched. So why had she allowed him to hold her? Pulling away, then, would have been far more effective, wouldn't it? In that final moment, when she leaned against his chest, that was an absolute misstep. Damn it all, for a split second, Fu Heng had actually worried Shen Qingluan might suddenly tilt her head up and declare, "Let's get married." Damn! Fu Heng rubbed his hands together forcefully. He had a sinking feeling that things might have just gotten seriously complicated. You're only at 62, 11%. That's a long way from your peak potential, you know? There's so much room for improvement. Don't throw it all away, Qingluan. Fu Heng leaned back against the seat, his gaze drifting out the window, a hint of weariness in his eyes. That audacious, high-stake plan of his felt shaky once more. Anyone else could afford to fail, but Qingluan. She absolutely could not. When it comes to playing it cool, if this guy's number 2, no one would dare claim to be number 1. My God, Solomon, of all people, just left hanging out to dry like that. The driver of a van tailing them from a distance couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. So damn satisfying. Seeing those foreigners look so thoroughly thwarted was just incredibly satisfying. If you knew what he pulled off overseas, you wouldn't be so surprised, the young man in the passenger seat retorted, though a hint of admiration still shone in his eyes. For his age, he was already exceptional, a real prodigy, but compared to Fu Heng. I've seen some of the files, but it's all Greek to me, the driver admitted. He'd been transferred from the military and had no access to, nor understanding of complex financial data. Just picture it as him leading the charge to basically print money. Or take it. A lot, you reckon? The driver's eyes gleamed with anticipation. Enough to buy? Oh, maybe a few dozen aircraft carriers. I don't know the exact figures. It's not like the people who made the haul are going to file a report. The young man arched an eyebrow, offering a more tangible comparison. Sweet mother of... So, stay sharp. A voice crackled over their earpieces, a sharp reprimand. Both men clammed up instantly, but the admiration in their eyes only burned brighter, bordering on fanatical. On the other side, the executive assistant finally finished her sandwich. Cup of artisan coffee in hand, she trailed after Shen Qingluan. The visiting delegation, surprisingly, demonstrated remarkable patience at this juncture. When the two women finally entered, their reception wasn't exactly warm, but it was civil enough, their expressions pleasant. These were, after all, seasoned business elites. If not innate composure, then sheer professionalism dictated how they should respond. There's an old saying, when things deviate wildly from the norm, mischief is afoot. Playing it cool, doing the unexpected, was certainly the right countermove. A minor psychological ploy, hardly a major offense. They'd recoup any perceived slight when it came to dividing the profits later. When substantial profits were at stake, what did a little face matter? This delegation, aside from Jack's personal assistant and bodyguard, consisted of legitimate, serious investors and analysts. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Jack," Shen Qingluan said politely, speaking in Chinese despite her English proficiency. The translator beside her blinked, momentarily stunned. The CEO of a publicly listed company, so young, and she didn't speak a foreign language? Jack smiled at this equally striking Eastern woman, offering no verbal response, simply waiting for the translation. "A pleasure to meet you too, my dear lady," Jack replied in flawless English after the translation, his smile radiant. "You've all come such a long way," Shen Qingluan began. "You haven't introduced this lady yet," Jack interjected, cutting Shen Qingluan off, his gaze intense as it fixed on Lana. It wasn't a sudden surge of lust on Jack's part. Rather, he'd noticed the tiny Bluetooth earpiece nestled in Shen Qingluan's ear. "Heh, remote-controlled, are we?" Interrupting the flow of conversation was Jack's tactic, a way to always maintain control. They all hyped up Catfish, but what was the result? Without Apocalypse, he's just a nobody. Number 1 OD'd, took himself out. Number 2, the Daredevil, tried to take on a celestial stronghold solo, without full intel or backup, and ended up dying with a few office workers. Number 3, he actually had some talent, amassing so much wealth in the Celestial Empire in such a short time. But without the $2 billion in startup capital the organization provided, would you have what you have now? Apocalypse is gone. You're just a lone salted fish, nothing more than fodder raised by capital. Think you're invincible just because you made some noise in the financial market? As long as the money's still in the market, getting it back is just a word away for them, isn't it? Didn't I come here personally this time just to make this fish recognize his place? Lest this fish forgets who provided the research funds that created a monster like him. My name is Lana. I'm her assistant. Lana, however, didn't wait for Shen Qingluan's reply, nor even for the translator, but spoke directly with a smile. But strangely, she also spoke Chinese. This answer made Jack pause for a moment. Although he knew Chinese, seeing the angelic-looking Lana speak fluent Chinese still felt very strange. For a moment, he felt Lana wasn't so perfect anymore. Damn it. He makes sure she wore a gag next time. So you've come all this way. What do you want? A partnership? Shen Qingluan, annoyed at being interrupted, repeated what she hadn't finished saying earlier. It was just. That last part of the sentence made the translator freeze. Seriously? That's not how you play mind games. But he had truly misjudged Shen Qingluan. Any normal business person, regardless of nationality or region, would treat a visit from Solomon with utmost importance. But how to put it? For Shen Qingluan, the current Hangyu was like Yuanbua had been when it was in Fu Hang's hands. No sense of attachment, you see? Fu Hang hadn't even known the company's name back then. So Shen Qingluan really didn't take Hangyu seriously. She wasn't skilled in company operations either. She might barely manage as an HR manager, but helming a $10 billion company? If it weren't for Lana, she would have sold Hangyu for cash long ago. Besides, her mind was completely elsewhere these days. She had returned the Ganlu milk tea, worth $1 billion just like that. If it came to trading Hangyu for that delivery guy now, she'd probably still do it without a second thought. Of course, that wasn't entirely accurate because that delivery guy wasn't the same person anymore. The current situation was difficult to measure in monetary terms, because Fu Hang himself was intrinsically linked to money. Even if Shen Qingluan told herself, "I like you, not your money," that person genuinely had so much money. It was hard to distinguish, and Shen Qingluan herself couldn't tell the difference. Jack's expression showed a hint of astonishment. He shifted his gaze from Lana's face to Shen Qingluan's, wondering about the intention behind Catfish's words. Of course, we've brought a vast number of orders, immense wealth, an opportunity that can make you soar. If it's about cooperation, talk to my assistant. Shen Qingluan cut Jack off, again, without waiting for the translator. Jack was left speechless. No matter how composed he usually was, being repeatedly ignored like this made it impossible to suppress the anger welling up inside him. Even at the Pentagon, that hawk-nosed fellow treated him with courtesy. And that was arguably the most powerful person in the world. Miss Shun, are you saying this lady can fully represent you? Jack's eyes narrowed as he looked at Lana again. Right, he had taken it for granted, assuming such a perfect Western woman wouldn't deign to associate with Catfish number 3, who had Eastern heritage. But in this world, how many people, especially women, didn't bow before money? So, this Lana was also Catfish's woman. Perhaps Shen Qingluan was just a figurehead, pushed forward because of her Eastern identity. After all, Lana was a Ph.D. in finance from Hajin University. Just talk to her about work matters. Shen Qingluan waved her hand dismissively and looked down. Only then did Jack notice that Shen Qingluan had been holding her phone the whole time, and horizontally at that. Now, she placed the phone directly on the table, propping it up with a teacup. A live stream? Jack frowned slightly, but the translator, off to the side, was dumbfounded. From his angle, he could vaguely see Shen Qingluan's phone screen. This CEO doesn't even have a privacy screen protector. Wait, are you binge-watching a show? In a meeting with the head of Solomon, you're on your phone, with Bluetooth earbuds, binge-watching a show? The translator forced himself to look away, feeling his entire worldview shaken. This CEO, Shun, this Hangyu, they were really showing utter contempt. Do you seriously not understand who Solomon is? The translator didn't dare to speak. He felt the atmosphere was incredibly strange. There had to be something going on that a small fry like him couldn't comprehend. But then, the subsequent conversation made him feel even more bewildered, to the point where he began to doubt his own professional skills. Because Jack and Lana, one speaking a foreign language, the other Chinese, started conversing without any hindrance. So, tell me, what kind of orders have you brought? Lana took a sip of coffee, a sweet smile gracing her lips. Massive orders. Everything except what's banned for sale in the Great Celestial Empire, We have it. Jack lifted his chin, suave and confident, earnestly admiring her captivating smile. What a pity. Tainted. No longer pure. Hangyu primarily deals in the rubber industry, Lana replied seriously. We have supply channels in 3 regions. A smirk played on Jack's lips. Oh, really? That's wonderful. We'll take them all, Lana said, raising an eyebrow delightedly, flashing a smile that revealed her pearly whites. Miss Lana, what makes you think we'd give all our orders to you? Well, Lana blinked, gently biting her lip. I can only tell you, and you alone. Lana hesitated, lowered her head slightly, then looked up at Jack from a very coquettish angle. You mean, you want to talk to me privately? Lana's eyes darted towards the rest of the delegation, her meaning clear. Then I'll head back. Before anyone else in the delegation could react, Shen Qingluan actually stood up. Lana nodded shyly. Shen Qingluan walked out without looking back, her eyes still glued to her phone. The moment she turned, Jack also saw her phone screen. But this didn't affect Jack's mood in the slightest. So, someone did recognize Solomon's influence after all. He looked at his own assistant, who understood immediately and hurriedly got up with the rest of the delegation. Show them around, Shen Qingluan said to the intern, Xiao, who was stationed by the door with a smile. Xiao instantly felt a mountain of pressure, the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She instinctively stood at attention. A few bodyguards walked to the door, hesitating. Although they knew Jack's identity, and that the great celestial empire wouldn't allow anything to happen to him within its borders, something still felt off. Jack subtly gave him a signal. The bodyguards nodded with grave expressions, but didn't follow the others to tour Hangyu. Instead, they stood quietly by the door. You can talk now. Jack leaned back, unbuttoned his suit jacket, and forcefully loosened his tie. Jack Solomon, 57 years old, born on the North Coast. Enlisted at 21, joined the Marine Corps, served for 5 years. Discharged at 26 and joined the family business. Lana's smile grew even softer. You know a lot about me. Jack's smile was also radiant. A sense of anticipation for what was to come grew within him. At 28, you were dispatched by the company to Asia, responsible for overseeing trade in the Asia-Pacific region. For 25 years, you rose to become the head of the Asia-Pacific branch. Jack's body relaxed further, and his gaze towards Lana gradually grew more intense. You have 3 sons, 1 daughter, and 7 illegitimate children. Your genes make you more likely to have sons. Have you ever wondered if that daughter is biologically yours? Lana's next words froze the smile on Jack's face, his ardent gaze instantly turning icy. It wasn't surprising she knew about his 3 sons and daughter. That information was widely available online. It wasn't even strange that she knew about his illegitimate children. His scandals were numerous. But 7 illegitimate children? 1 son had only been born last month. The public had no idea. They say you were dispatched by the company to handle overseas trade. But in reality, you were commissioned by the Central Intelligence Agency to oversee intelligence gathering in the Asia-Pacific region. And your Solomon identity? Just a cover, a protection. Finance. What the hell do you know about finance? Lana suddenly chuckled, her eyes filled with playful mockery and derision. What exactly are you trying to say? Firstly, thank you for your past contributions to Apocalypse, Captain. A corner of Lana's mouth curled up, forming a wicked smile. Jack's eyes widened abruptly. Apocalypse gave me a lot, but that doesn't stop me from hating him. Therefore, I equally despise you for once providing him with funds. Lana's eyes grew colder bit by bit, yet the smile on her face became even more radiant. I was actually wondering when I get around to finding you. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to my doorstep. You are. Jack met those bloodthirsty eyes and finally understood. Catfish. She was catfish. Yes, no one could be this perfect. Only a genetically engineered person. Damn it. What had Apocalypse done? Weren't they told number 3 was based on an Eastern genetic template? A male, around 30 years old? Damn, that intelligence department. Catfish number 3 was a woman, a Western woman. She was catfish. Fu Hang was just a front, a puppet she put forward. No wonder Shen Qingluan was completely uninterested in negotiations. No wonder she dared to ignore my presence. Your expression right now is quite amusing. You don't actually believe those men outside can ensure your safety, do you? You really don't understand catfish, do you? What a waste of money. Lana clicked her tongue and shook her head, a look of pity on her face. What are you planning to do? Jack stood up nervously, his gaze instinctively flicking to the door. Even though he despised these genetic freaks deep down, he knew their basic stats. They were monsters bred for combat, terrifying in close quarters. I'll give you a chance to see the results of your investment. Call them in. 3 of them are armed. You could try and see if you can walk out of this conference room under the protection of 6 well-trained soldiers. Lana's voice was laced with languor as she slowly removed a hair tie from her wrist and elegantly tied up her long hair. You don't do anything rash. If something happens to me in Great Cathay, it could trigger a regional war. Wouldn't that be better? Save me the trouble of hunting down your Solomon family members one by one. I'm actually quite busy lately, not much time for entertainment. See, I have this big company to manage. And let me tell you a secret, I also handle the hunting these days. Sigh, your arrival has put me in a difficult position. I'm really busy. You see, if I kill you, the Solomon family will definitely be shaken, and the CIA will make a move. At the very least, they'll all be on alert and on guard. I'd have to go to Los Angeles to take out your wife and your second son, then to South Africa to find your eldest. He's probably digging for diamonds right now, isn't he? Then off to Japan to eliminate your third son and your fifth illegitimate child. By the way, do they even know they're half-brothers? And then, Lana recited names and addresses as if listing family heirlooms, causing Jack's face to grow increasingly pale. Oh, right, I won't touch your daughter. She's really not yours biologically. She's your cousin Roger's daughter. Yes, that Roger, curly hair, walked with a bit of a limp. A look of pity suddenly appeared in Lana's eyes as she looked at Jack. To be fair, because he only had one daughter, Jack had practically doted on her like a princess. That expression on your face. Does it mean you truly know nothing about your own investment product? Did Apocalypse really not disclose any product information to you at all? Lana suddenly widened her eyes innocently, her face a picture of disbelief. Jack's forehead was covered in sweat. When Lana accurately recited the names and current locations of his illegitimate children, panic set in. Truly, he had underestimated how terrifying these genetically engineered people were. One of his sons had just gotten off a plane last night, yet Lana knew his exact location. He had already guessed it. Hackers, top-tier hackers. Either Lana herself or a team she controlled. But either way, it was more than he could handle. Damn it, he never should have researched these monsters in the first place. We can cooperate. Apocalypse is gone. You need support, you need money. Whatever you want to do, you'll need money. Why would you think I'm short on cash? I'm already very wealthy. Besides, if I need more money, I can just get it from the financial markets, can't I? Lana blinked curiously, wiggling her fingers. Jack was truly panicking now. Judging by the records of Catfish 1 and 2, the few men at the door likely wouldn't be able to stop this monster before him. Great Cathay wouldn't allow anything to happen to him within its borders. But this was Catfish. They weren't really human, just monsters with human genes. The genes implanted in them were inherently unstable. They were capable of anything and wouldn't consider the consequences at all. I can give you all the project orders. Oh, has your brilliant intellect reclaimed its commanding heights? Lana's smile vanished, and she looked somewhat displeased. We came with sincerity. Whatever you want, we can accommodate you. Not bad. You've earned a chance to change the game rules. How about this? We'll switch things up. I'll let you go now. You gather your people to come after me, to hunt me down. Then we'll see how long it takes me to break out of your encirclement and how much time I need, under your special protection, to kill everyone related to you by blood. Don't worry, I'll save you for last. Lana was silent for a moment, then joyfully proposed another plan. Jack, however, quickly interjected, No. Our goals are aligned. We're on the same side, allies. Whatever you need, we'll cooperate fully. But Lana frowned and slowly stood up. No. We really can cooperate. Jack pleaded, frantically backing away. But Lana walked to the door and opened it. Your boss wants you to come in, Lana said with a slight smile, speaking in fluent, unaccented English. The bodyguards were momentarily stunned. After peeking inside, they all filed in. Over there. Bodyguards should stand by their boss, Lana said, stretching languidly and cracking her neck. She's the Catfish, Jack stammered, seeing the bodyguard's confusion, his voice weak. Suddenly, the highly trained bodyguards made a swift assessment. For rushed towards Jack, while 2 lunged at Lana. But in the next instant, Lana moved. 3 armed bodyguards didn't even manage to draw their weapons. 1 had his gun snatched, and 2 had their wrists dislocated. By the time they registered what happened, Lana was standing before Jack, an icy expression on her face, casually tossing a marker pen in her hand. Jack's face was ashen. A perfect hexagram was drawn on his forehead. The bodyguards exchanged horrified glances, each noticing a thin black line drawn across the other's throats. If Lana had been holding a dagger, they had always heard how terrifying the Catfish was, but only by facing her directly did they understand how inadequate mere words were. It's been a while since I killed anyone. I was getting a little rusty, Lana sighed, capping the marker and turning to Jack. Cooperation. We can cooperate. We'll comply. We'll comply with anything. Tears welled up in Jack's eyes, and he felt a dampness in his crotch. Actually, I was rather looking forward to the second option, Lana said with a sweet smile. The Solomon inspection team left, and very hastily at that. But everyone at Hungyu Group was going crazy. In less than 20 minutes, she had secured all of Solomon's orders. What was the background of this new president? What kind of methods did she use? After giving them such a show of force during the reception, how could she still achieve such results? The combination of Shen Qingluan and Lana instantly added another layer of mystery in the minds of Hungyu Group's employees. Shen Qingluan, however, seemed somewhat disappointed by this. She had actually hoped to run Hungyu into the ground, just to see how Fu Heng would react. What on earth did you talk to him about? He was acting so high and mighty. How did he agree so easily? You didn't actually. Shen Qingluan looked Lana's explosive figure up and down, a hint of suspicion in her eyes. I was just about to take my clothes off, but then the old geezer caved. Lana shrugged, looking perfectly innocent. She was eagerly anticipating Captain Jack's meeting with Qin Yuchu that afternoon, because she had given Solomon an additional condition. When Fu Heng arrived at the film set, he was still replaying Shen Qingluan's behavior downstairs at the company, which made his expression rather grim. However, when he walked onto the set with Baldy, he was surprised to find that despite his star status, no one seemed to notice his arrival. Baldy felt he had failed in his duty. He cleared his throat, preparing to announce their presence. But he hesitated. Should he bellow, "Boss is here," in his rough voice, or try a high-pitched theatrical "His Lordship has arrived"? The latter felt more imposing, but his vocal cords weren't up to it. It seemed he'd need to find a subordinate with a shrill voice specifically for such occasions. Otherwise, the boss's grand entrance would lose its impact. He decided to stick to his usual method and just shout, "Boss is here." Many of the crew were old associates. They'd get the cue. He took a deep breath, but a hand suddenly blocked him. Baldy froze, eyes wide, carefully looking at Fu Heng. He saw that Fu Heng was staring intently ahead, his face etched with caution. But with the breath caught in his chest, unable to exhale or swallow, Baldy's face turned beet red. The next moment, he burst into a violent coughing fit. He desperately tried to hold it in, but a cough, especially when you've choked on your breath, is incredibly hard to suppress. Baldy's thunderous cough finally drew the attention of others on set. But before they could react, from the direction Fu Heng was staring at, a devilishly charming figure slowly rose. Meeting those bewitching, demonic eyes, Baldy's cough miraculously stopped. Fu Heng licked his lips and glanced around, finding the surroundings eerily silent. What the hell? What was going on? How had this tigress changed so much? When Fu Heng first saw Ing Yanin, she was sitting alone in the very center, surrounded by various pieces of equipment. The director was talking to a burly man, drenched in sweat and with visible injuries on his face. The others around them were acting strangely. They all seemed engrossed in their own tasks, yet their attention was covertly fixed on Ing Yanin, who sat in the middle of the set, legs spread apart on the ground. It was an "I'm secretly watching you, but please don't notice me" kind of vibe. And Ing Yanin sat there nonchalantly, her 117 centimeters long legs spread wide, the tight leather pants outlining them in a way that was both sexy and wild. She looked somewhat dazed, a little dejected, yet there was also an irrepressible undercurrent of excitement and madness. A very contradictory demeanor. And it was precisely this that put Fu Heng on high alert the moment he saw her. He had feigned madness and played the fool before. He knew exactly how dangerous such an expression could be. This woman was unhinged. Ing Yanin was indeed dazed. She was stuck on a scene. It was a fight scene. The setup was that 13th sister, due to a gang war, had led her men to storm the enemy's den. While her underlings fought on the perimeter, she charged in alone to hunt down the rival gang's leader. Naturally, she fought her way through, taking down over a dozen people. At this point, the rival gang's Red Pole, their top enforcer, appeared. The two of them were supposed to have an epic showdown. The problem lay in this very showdown. The actor playing the Red Pole was a stuntman brought in by director Liu, who was also one of the film's action choreographers. For the sake of visual impact, the action choreographer himself had stepped in to play the role. But they had filmed this scene all afternoon yesterday, and it just wasn't right. Actually, the problem wasn't with Ing Yanin. Director Liu was quite satisfied with her performance. When this woman went wild, a few strong men truly couldn't hold her back. That viciousness, that brutality, many veteran actors specializing in villain roles couldn't achieve that. But it was precisely this that brought filming to a standstill. The more intense the fight scene, the richer the emotions needed to be. Fight scenes weren't just a few flashy moves, especially in a film leaning towards realism. Yanen's emotional intensity was top tier. She could slip in a character in a second, going completely wild on cue. The problem was once this girl went wild, the scene tended to spiral out of control. She couldn't stick to the pre-choreographed fight moves at all. She fought as if she meant to kill. The stuntmen were naturally skilled. If they truly went all out, they wouldn't necessarily be outmatched by Yanen, who had a police academy background. But here's the thing. Would any stuntman dare to really fight Yanen? Don't be ridiculous. Word had spread. This girl was the boss's woman. Given what the crew knew about their mysterious boss, if they actually heard his woman, getting blacklisted from the industry would be a light punishment. So, the fight scenes weren't working out. Director Liu tried to communicate with Yanen. How about you rein in your emotions a bit? Let's stick to the choreography. Yanen was very obedient to the director. She was just releasing her soul. As a complete newcomer, she didn't yet understand how to use her status to bully the director on set. In short, she just looked wild, or rather, she deliberately made herself act wild. Thus, Yanen stopped acting wild, reined in her emotions, and meticulously completed the design moves. Only, director Liu wasn't satisfied. What kind of fighting is this? A middle school talent show taekwondo performance. Yanen's moves were executed perfectly, but it was as if she had a switch. Her upper limit was very high, but her lower limit was very low. Without emotional backing, her performance had no spark. Just moments ago, director Liu had retracted his order, telling Yanen to go back to fighting unrestrainedly, just like before. This made things miserable for the stuntman, who had to endure another 2 rounds of beatings for nothing. Director Liu understood the stuntman's plight. He knew the man didn't dare to fight back. But if he didn't fight back, how could it be called a climactic showdown? Director Liu's old way of thinking kicked in again. His gaze swept over the surrounding extras. What if another hidden acting prodigy emerged? But this time, almost like the last, wherever his gaze landed, the brawny, rough-looking men instantly became as demure as well-bred young ladies. Then, Director Liu was drawn by the sound of a cough. Was someone trying to get his attention? Director Liu's eyes lit up as he spotted a large, bald head. This guy looks good. Ferocious, menacing. He looked like he could fight, or, at the very least, take a beating. Wait a minute. Was that the boss? Was this someone the boss had brought? For a moment, Director Liu felt his eyes well up. Where could one find such a boss? Had he just brought someone over to help him out? But before Director Liu could speak, Yanen, who had been sitting nearby, stood up. With her head lowered, she shot a cold, sidelong glare at Fu Hang, the suppressed ferocity within her slowly unleashing. The strange atmosphere on set was instantly charged by this aura, like an awakening demon. In an instant, everyone, including Director Liu, held their breath. Fu Hang's mouth twitched. He instinctively wanted to hide behind Baldy, but unexpectedly, Baldy sidestepped and swiftly positioned himself behind Fu Hang. Fu Hang was speechless. Aren't you supposed to be a bodyguard? I pay you a damn good salary. But Baldy's thinking was simple. All eyes are on us. This is a classic moment for the boss to show off. How could I block the boss's camera shot at a time like this? Baldy Long, or just Baldy, slightly lowered his head, even tucking in his neck, doing his utmost to minimize his presence. Fu Hang was exasperated, but facing the crazy girl's murderous gaze, he couldn't very well dodge in front of so many people. Is my persona not a persona anymore? Fu Hang slightly lifted his chin, revealing his most satisfactory jawline. He hadn't shaved today, and the slight stubble exuded masculinity. But before he could fully build up his imposing aura, Yanen across from him suddenly moved her foot, flicking up a steel pipe from the ground. With a sweep of the staff she'd been holding, one that reached her eyebrows, she sent the pipe flying towards Fu Hang. Fu Hang's eyes narrowed, and he instinctively caught it. Just as he was wondering what was going on, he saw the staff whistling towards him. Holy crap, what the hell? You're attacking without a word to? Straight to your ultimate move with no wind-up. Shen Qingluan was like this. Lana was like this. How did you become like this too? But the Grandmaster wasn't flustered by this scene at all. After all, she was just a girl who graduated from a police academy, no matter how good her grades were or how wild she acted. Could she be worse than that drooling one? Fu Hang raised the steel pipe and easily parried, a smirk playing on his lips. This kind of point-blank super move? I could take it head-on. But before his smirk could fully form, Yanen spun around, and her second staff strike, whistling through the air, came at him again without the slightest pause. Yanin was truly repressed. She came to the film set to act precisely to release herself, to release that wildness suppressed by her father since childhood, by school during her studies, and by various rules and regulations after becoming a police officer. She had filmed several scenes today, and although she fought wildly, she knew in her heart, this was acting, it wasn't real. She actually felt guilty for accidentally injuring the stuntmaster. She knew it was because of her lack of emotional control that she had unintentionally hurt him. Yet, the more she tried to control this wildness, the more repressed she felt. Then she saw Fu Hang. This man could really fight. And she wouldn't feel guilty for hurting him. You hit me. You licked me. You made me sit on that kiddie ride in the parking lot. You entered my dreams every day to bully me without my permission. Yanin completely unleashed her emotions, launching a barrage of attacks with utter abandon. At this moment, Yanin had forgotten she was filming. She was purely venting her anger. The surrounding crowd scattered with a whoosh. They couldn't quite understand why the boss's woman was so fierce towards the boss. Didn't she publicly lick the boss just yesterday? Could it be that one of the other boss's women had upset her? For a moment, everyone suddenly felt a bit of sympathy for the boss. It's not easy being rich, huh? But then again, the boss really could fight. Those guys who boasted they'd seen him fly weren't lying. Only Director Liu, after a few seconds of stunned silence, sharply looked towards the cameraman. And all the cameramen gave him an okay sign. On a film set, this was almost an instinct for a competent cameraman. For such unexpected incidents, they didn't even need the director's instructions. In the digital age, there was no fear of wasting footage, right? The set was dead silent. Only the sharp clacks of the staff and pipe clashing could be heard, occasionally mixed with Yanin's angry shouts. After blocking a few strikes, Fu Hang started to get angry too. Damn it, are you addicted to hitting me? Isn't a few hits enough to make your point? Just because you can't hurt me doesn't mean you can humiliate me. I'm the boss. With so many of my underlings watching, don't I have face to lose? You really think I won't fight back? Fu Hang began to counter. But to be precise, it wasn't a counterattack, but rather countermeasures, appropriate attacks to reduce her strike frequency, making him look less like he was just passively taking a beating. After all, Fu Hang had a vague feeling that this tigress becoming like this probably had something to do with him. He remembered how she used to be, a girl brimming with righteousness, upright and unyielding, a true heroine who seemed to radiate the spirit of the nation when standing in the sunlight. How had she turned into this? Fu Hang couldn't bring himself to strike her hard. But as Fu Hang fought back, the battle grew increasingly fierce. With each clash of their staffs, Yanin seemed to grasp the essence of the chaotic cloak staff technique, her strikes coming one after another, each more ferocious and ruthless than the last. After exchanging a dozen more blows, she completely abandoned her defense. Even when Fu Hang's steel pipe swung at her, she ignored it, adopting a mutual destruction approach. The onlookers clicked their tongues in amazement. Damn, if this wasn't like catching them in the act with everyone watching this drama unfold, she wouldn't be this furious. Yanin suddenly dropped her guard. Several times, Fu Hang nearly injured her and had to hastily pull back to block, almost getting hit himself in the process. The anger in Fu Hang's heart was truly becoming unbearable. Seeing Yanin's staff coming at him again, Fu Hang's eyes narrowed. He calculated the angle of the long staff and suddenly unleashed the full power of a grandmaster. Crack! The staff, level with her eyebrows, snapped in two. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. In their eyes, Fu Hang was still just blocking. If that blow hadn't been blocked, holy crap. The onlookers took another 2 steps back. Only the stuntman with the swollen face gulped. So, the boss lady really had been holding back earlier. Even with her staff broken, Yanin didn't stop. She took a step back, then launched a spinning roundhouse kick, her captivating long legs lashing out like a flexible whip straight at Fu Hang's head. Fu Hang snorted coldly, leaning back to dodge the whip-like kick, then shot out his hand to grab Yanin's neck. You're really pushing it, aren't you? But, to be fair, although this woman fought with wild, sweeping strikes with the staff, she seemed to have a better grasp of close-quarters combat. After all, police academy training, aside from batons and riot sticks, focused on unarmed combat. Seeing Fu Hang's large hand coming, Yanin chopped with her palm, but Fu Hang twisted his hand and seized her wrist. Hit. Or grappling hold. You think you're the only one who knows that? Let's see where you run now. Fu Hang pressed forward, but suddenly felt his wrist tighten. Yanin's other hand had grabbed his arm. A counter grapple? Fu Hang was slightly surprised. This woman's combat instincts are this strong. In the next instant, Yanan spun again, hooking Fu Hang's arm over her shoulder. She twisted and squatted, her calf muscles powering a leg drive, twisting her waist and hips. It was a shoulder throw, intending to hurl Fu Hang away. Damn it! Realizing Yanan's intent, alarm bell screamed in Fu Hang's mind. If he got thrown, where'd he hide his face? He sank his stance, took a stride, and pressed himself against Yanan's back. His other arm shot out and wrapped tightly around her waist. This time, Fu Hang thankfully wasn't thrown. But the resulting posture was. One of Fu Hang's arms went over Yanan's right shoulder, held tightly in her embrace, his forearm sinking into that soft expanse. His other hand was clasped firmly around her waist, leaving almost no space between their bodies. Yanan's shoulder throw required her full body strength. Thus, at the moment of exertion, her body leaned forward, her rear end jutting out. Normally, if Fu Hang had been thrown, this posture wouldn't have been a big deal. But Fu Hang hadn't been thrown. So it became Fu Hang hugging Yanan tightly from behind, while her rear end arched back. The scene instantly became awkward. Fu Hang, bumped by her arching motion, felt his mind stir. So many people were watching. But Yanan was completely caught up in the fight. Failing to throw Fu Hang and finding herself held tightly, she instinctively tried to throw him again. And then, another arch of her rear. Again, and another arch. Fu Hang's face darkened. Are you trying to seduce me? When Li Weiyang arrived on set, this was the scene she witnessed. A jut, an arch, a bend, thrust. What is going on here? Li Weiyang's expression was frosty. Her Weiyang saber seemed to surge skyward, radiating an earth-shattering, killing intent. This is my set. Do you all really think Li Weiyang is made of clay? We're rehearsing a scene. Director Liu gulped, offering a strained explanation. Rehearsing? What kind of scene are you filming? Can this even pass censorship? A cold glint flickered in Li Weiyang's eyes. The gangster genre already pushes the boundaries, and now this? Do you really think the censorship department is owned by Fu Hang's family? Cough, cough. Cough, cough. Director Liu coughed violently. The four assistant directors simultaneously rushed to get him a glass of water, nearly fighting over it. Fu Hang seemed to have heard Li Weiyang's voice too. He guiltily released Yanan, a hint of reluctance in his heart. The feel was truly nice. A pleasant experience. So it was because of her leg length that he'd had a visual misjudgment. She was actually very curvy, full, and soft. But Yanan, just freed, showed no signs of relief from a near disaster. She spun with a whip kick, once again lashing out at Fu Hang. Those last few moments had only made her more furious. Fu Hang was speechless. Glancing in Li Weiyang's direction, his expression turned grave as he raised his hand to block. He had also heard director Liu's words earlier. Rehearsing. This was a rehearsal. Smack! The sound of muscle meeting muscle rang out as Fu Hang caught Yanan's calf. I'll let you go wild. Let's see how wild you can be now. But in the next moment, Yanan completely ignored her caught calf, pushing off with her other leg to sweep at Fu Hang again. Fu Hang was momentarily stunned. If he didn't let go, Yanan's knee would be twisted. Seeing how ruthless Yanan was, he was completely dumbfounded. Was it really that serious? I just licked you once, and didn't you lick me back? You even seemed disgusted. Could it be because I wasn't good enough to lick? Actually, it was because of the stubble on my face. Other parts were fine, right? Fu Hang let go, but in that short time, he had no other defensive measures. He could only raise his retracting hand to block Yanan's other leg. Smack! Another sound. But this time, before Fu Hang could grab Yanan's leg again, her body spun in midair. The leg he had released didn't drop. Instead, following the momentum of her spin, it fiercely clamped around Fu Hang's head. The Black Widow's signature leg scissor choke had appeared. Normally, with his head caught by a spinning body, Fu Hang should have been thrown, or at the very least pulled down with her. Yanan's combat instincts were indeed outstanding. This move was both brilliant and ruthless. But then again, this was a grandmaster. With his head clamped, Fu Hang remained completely still. He was even worried Yanan might hurt herself, so he carefully extended his other hand to support her suspended upper body. This scene, how to describe it? Let everyone use their imagination. Yanan was extremely annoyed. She felt like she hadn't landed a single effective blow on Fu Hang, and instead, she was exhausted. She had vented physically, but not emotionally at all, right? She gritted her teeth, her legs stretched straight, ankles locked together, leveraging against each other. Her glutes, aided by her outer thigh muscles, fiercely tightened, squeezing Fu Hang's neck. I refuse to believe your neck is stronger than my legs. She desperately squeezed her legs, trying to strangle, crush, or suffocate Fu Hang with this move. Fu Hang's vision was completely obscured by the tight leather pants. No one could see his face, which lessened the awkwardness he felt. Speaking of which, was it really okay for things to get this suggestive? His cheeks felt warm. It must be Anne's body heat, right? She was sweating a lot. His face was damp, carrying a unique, fragrant scent. She felt solid and strong. But trying to suffocate a grandmaster this way. His heart was indeed beating a little faster, and his breathing was a bit ragged, but that wasn't because of the pressure on his face. The set fell silent again. Even Li Weiyang couldn't figure out what was happening for a moment. The moment Fu Hang had let go of Nan, she'd seen the vicious glint in Nan's eyes. That definitely wasn't flirting. She genuinely wanted to kill Fu Hang, especially when Nan's second kick swept out. Li Weiyang almost cried out in alarm. What was wrong with these two? Rehearsing a scene like this? It was too much, wasn't it? But before she could cry out, the scene froze. One stood ramrod straight, an imposing figure, as if shouldering the weight of a mountain. The other was held horizontally in a rather indescribable position, letting out little grunts and whimpers from time to time. It sounded like furious roars, but combined with the visual, it inevitably sparked people's imaginations. At this moment, Fu Hang actually wanted to say something, but his mouth was completely covered. If he tried to speak, his voice would probably sound very strange. His right hand supported Nan. He couldn't let go, or her upper body would fall. And with someone hanging off his neck, letting go would make the scene even weirder. But his left hand from the previous block was also pinned by those long legs right at his throat. If he pulled it out, he'd probably really suffocate. The scene reached a stalemate. It was bizarre, utterly surreal. The surrounding extras tacitly looked away and busied themselves with other things. Director Liu suddenly pulled the martial arts instructor aside and began discussing in a low voice whether the previous move was feasible. Only Baldy Long, true to his character name, Long Outyin, he looked unfazed, even showing a hint of admiration. The boss is still the boss. So that's how you counter that move. I still have a long way to go. Li Weiyang's expression turned uglier by the second. She'd finally noticed it. Fu Hang, still on his feet, seemed to be getting an erection. Fu Hang seemed to have noticed the problem too. Damn it, with so many people around. If this really became obvious, he'd lose so much face. It would be worse than being thrown out earlier. But he couldn't think of any way out of the current situation. He couldn't just do a backflip and slamming Nan onto the ground, could he? With no martial arts counters available, Fu Hang instinctively opened his mouth and bit down. He didn't actually bite hard. He just wanted to signal to the tigress that it was enough. Or they'd both end up thoroughly embarrassed. The most direct moves are often the most effective. Nan instantly reacted as if electrocuted, 1,000,000 volts surging through her. She shuddered violently, and then all the strength drained from her body. As if her stamina had given out, she suddenly went limp. Fu Hang's neck was freed. He instinctively raised his arms and caught Nan in his embrace. A princess carry. Fu Hang licked his lips and looked down, only to meet a pair of utterly bewildered eyes. How to describe that gaze? A hint of spring in her brows, a touch of coyness in her eyes, watery and moist. Where was the viciousness from before? Ahem. Director Liu, was that last sequence okay? Fu Hang gently tried to set Nan down, but her legs had no strength at all. The moment he let go, she started to fall, and Fu Hang hurriedly caught her again. Even without turning around, Fu Hang could feel a murderous wave of sword intent wash over him. Excellent. Absolutely perfect. Of course. I mean the first half, Director Liu exclaimed dramatically, but after a glare from Li Weiyang, he weakly added the supplement. If it works, it works. Let's go with that. Someone, helping Nan rest. She's exhausted her stamina. Fu Hang handed Nan over to two female assistants, scratching his head awkwardly. The crew immediately bustled with activity again, everyone looking busy. Weiyang, you're here. Fu Hang forced a smile and braced himself as he walked over. She was currently firmly at the top of the rankings. Calling her the #1 big sister wouldn't be an exaggeration. He couldn't afford to lose favorability points over this. He was counting on Li Weiyang to go all out as an all-class grandmaster. Li Weiyang didn't speak, just stared daggers at Fu Hang. But she didn't stare continuously. Every 3 to 5 seconds, her gaze would flick downwards for a second before returning to Fu Hang. That gaze made Fu Hang feel as if he'd been stripped bare, the hairs on his body standing on end. The crew said a sequence wasn't working out, so they asked me to try. Fu Hang attempted to salvage the situation. Oomph. Li Weiyong snorted coldly and turned her head away. Fu Hang sighed in relief internally. A snort meant it wasn't a big deal. As expected of the number one big sister, that 17% wasn't just for show. President Fu, there's a problem. Director Liu, seeming to have picked up on the subtle atmosphere between the two, braced himself against the sword intent and walked over, having apparently made a difficult decision. Oh, what problem? Speak freely. Isn't that why I'm here? To solve problems for you. Fu Hang's expression suddenly turned serious, and he secretly gave Director Liu a thumbs up in his mind. This Director Liu was a real man. When there was trouble, he really stepped up. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but glance at Baldy Long. You slacker, you failed in your duty twice today, huh? Only been away for a day, and you're already daydreaming about college? Well, it's like this. That sequence just now was truly perfect. I can hardly imagine any fight scene out there that could compare. In terms of realism, fluidity, and visual appeal, it was flawless. Director Liu glanced at Li Weiyong, who had turned her head away, and poured out compliments as if they were free. Then what's the problem? Fu Hang frowned. This wave of praise was quite satisfying to him, not because of the emotional validation, but because it was politically correct. This concerned the narrative and official judgment of that fight scene. This was very important, especially when facing the top executive of Weiyong Entertainment. One's political stance had to be correct. The problem is, our stunt team can't do it, Director Liu said regretfully, his gaze shifting to the martial arts instructor standing aside, who looked thoroughly troubled. They can't do it? Fu Hang raised an eyebrow. How could they possibly have your skills, sir? To be able to control things so Yanan could go all out without getting hurt. Wasn't that why we were stuck all morning? That is troublesome. Fu Hang glanced at Li Weiyong, stroking the stubble on his chin with a troubled look. So, Director Liu's eyes darted around, his tone hesitant. If you have a solution, just say it. I told you. I'm here to solve your problems, Fu Hang said with a wave of his hand, a hint of reproach in his voice. This role, could you perhaps play it yourself, sir? Director Liu steeled himself and finally asked directly. This, in truth, was why Director Liu was willing to brave Li Weiyong's displeasure and approach him. The production of this film had been almost divinely blessed in every way so far. It would have been bearable if he hadn't seen it, but now that he'd glimpsed the ideal footage, abandoning it would be more agonizing than death itself. Me? Act. Fu Hang was taken aback. He genuinely hadn't expected Director Liu to suggest such a thing. Nonsense, Li Weiyong interjected sharply. Mr. Li, please hear me out. This character only has this one scene. No prior appearances, and they're killed off right after they show up. Then it's a wrap for them. This sequence is incredibly important. Based on the template we just saw, I'd bet on it winning Best Cinematography at a film festival. And what about Fu Hang's status? Li Weiyong couldn't help but ask again. He wouldn't have to show his face. A mask, a full hood, anything works. Only Mr. Fu can pull off the sequence. You wouldn't want a project, Mr. Fu has high hopes for to be anything less than perfect, would you? Director Liu grew anxious, gesticulating wildly as he spoke. Weiyong, Fu Hang said calmly, looking earnestly at Director Liu. For a moment, he couldn't tell if the director genuinely wanted him to act or was just trying to defuse the situation for him. Li Weiyong's attention had indeed been diverted, but him acting? Just one sequence, no face shown. It didn't seem like a big deal, did it? I don't have much time, Fu Hang probed further. We can shoot it right now. As soon as Yanan is rested, we can start immediately. If you can guarantee a repeat of that last take, we could even do it in a single shot. 10 minutes, and we're done. Director Liu was overjoyed, nearly jumping to his feet. All right then, I'll do it. Find me a cool-looking mask. No, a full hood. Something ferocious, Fu Hang said, rolling his neck and offering a gentle smile. Fu Hang, I won't be showing my face, right? It's for the movie. I hope your company's first production can be a smash hit. Fu Hang turned, his eyes clear and sincere as he looked at Li Weiyong. Fu Hang. Li Weiyong trembled, his eyes shimmering with emotion. He was always like this. A wave of guilt washed over Li Weiyong. A billionaire of his stature, deigning to play a mere extra for his sake. And just moments ago, he had been blaming him. Rest for a bit. I'll go get into makeup, Fu Hang said, tilting his head with another gentle smile. His voice was exceptionally deep, as if resonating entirely from his chest rather than his vocal cords. Li Weiyang was once again overwhelmed by the sheer force of that sound, lost adrift, and utterly captivated by that sexy, resonant baritone. He had to do something for him. Though deeply moved, the thought that Fu Hang would soon be filming a scene with Ing Yanin made Li Weiyang decide to stay on set rather than leave. Ing Yanin took a long time to recover, emerging from her dressing room a full 2 hours later. It was obvious she'd even taken a shower. But once they were both in full makeup and the cameras started rolling, Ing Yanin seemed off her game. That ruthless edge was gone. They shot 2 takes, and director Liu had to call cut halfway through both. Tired? Director Liu asked cautiously. Ing Yanin shook her head, just looking at Fu Hang with a bewildered expression. But whenever their eyes met, she felt a jolt, like an electric current, shoot through her. This. Director Liu looked at Fu Hang apologetically. Who would have thought that Ing Yanin, who usually got into character in an instant, couldn't find a rhythm? Let's try one more take, Fu Hang said from under his mask, his eyes narrowing slightly. He had a good idea why. Director Liu, resigned, signaled for everyone to get ready. Truthfully, after 2 failed takes, he knew the actors needed to recalibrate. Shooting again immediately would just be a waste of time. With a call of action, Fu Hang walked into the frame, holding a steel pipe. Ing Yanin, clutching her staff, stood there quietly, her eyes still tinged with confusion. Director Liu sighed softly, but Fu Hang had already charged forward. Ing Yanin instinctively took 2 steps back. Fu Hang leaped into the air, steel pipe raised high, and brought it crashing down. Ing Yanin dodged to the side. Fu Hang's blow was powerful, but not particularly fast. Having evaded the strike, Ing Yanin mechanically raised her staff, preparing for a side attack on Fu Hang, when she suddenly saw a hand lashing out towards her face like a thunderbolt. She tried to dodge by instinct, but it was too late. Fast. It was simply too fast. Crack. The sharp sound of a slap echoed. Ing Yanin was almost slapped senseless. Dazed, she lifted her head, only to see the steel pipe, glinting coldly, sweeping towards her again. In her haste, she could only raise her staff to block. Clang! The sound of weapons clashing rang out. Ing Yanin stumbled and fell from the force of the blow. Astonished, she looked up to see Fu Hang leap again, hands clasped above his head, the steel pipe descending like a colossal axe capable of cleaving the heavens, imbued with overwhelming killing intent. Through the eye holes of his mask, she saw a murderous glint that felt all too real. Rolling aside, Ing Yanin narrowly avoided the strike. Thwack! The steel pipe slammed into the ground, sending dust flying. Ing Yanin, head lowered, stared blankly at the crater it left. Fu Hang stood there, looking down at her, and gave the pipe in his hand an elegant flourish. Ing Yanin slowly raised her eyes, her expression transformed. Hey, Heth. A chilling, almost demonic cackle escaped her lips, that unholy, frenzied glint returning to her eyes. Hiya! Ing Yanin let out a long cry, reversed her grip on the staff, and lunged forward. Twisting her body, she swung the staff with the whistling force of a great halberd. Fu Hang didn't dodge, instead raising his steel pipe to meet the blow head-on. Clang! The weapons met again, but this time they were evenly matched. Director Liu's face flushed with excitement. This was it. This was it. The scene reached a fever pitch. Every move was lethal, a brutal contest of kill or be killed. This high-intensity, relentless clash lasted for a full 3 minutes. With Li Weiyang watching from the side, Fu Hang, with his Grandmaster-level control, timed it perfectly. When he saw director Liu give a slight nod, he knew they had enough footage. After another exchange, the webbing of Fu Hang's hand gave way from the impact, and Ing Yanin's strike knocked the steel pipe from his grasp, leaving him exposed. Ing Yanin, once again consumed by a battle frenzy, how could she possibly miss such an opportunity? With a practiced twist of her body, she brought her staff around in a sweeping backhand strike. Fu Hang's expression tensed. He leaned back in a seemingly panicked move. The staff swept past the tip of his nose, taking a bead of sweat with it. But then, Fu Hang's body suddenly launched into the air, spinning almost 9.5 times like a top, flying towards the distance. He landed, rolled several times, and then lay there, motionless. But Ing Yanin clearly had no intention of stopping. Gripping her staff with both hands, she leaped high and plunged it towards Fu Hang's back. Fu Hang! Li Weiyang shot up from his seat, rushing madly towards him. His cry was desperate, a gut-wrenching sound of utter despair. Li Weiyang's eyes couldn't follow the trajectory of their exchange at all, let alone make out their movements. In her vision, The staff Yanan had just swept out had landed solidly on Fu Hang's face, sending him flying and spinning countless times. She was too terrified to breathe. A sense of suffocation instantly enveloped her entire body. But Yanan still wasn't stopping. Was this truly a fight to the death? Her cry made Yanan's crazed eyes flicker, but the staff was already descending. It was too late to pull back. Thwack! The staff pierced through his chest. Fu Hang's body jerked upwards violently, then went rigid and motionless. Li Weiyang, who had only taken 2 steps, collapsed limply to the ground, her eyes filled with nothing but terror and despair. Tears gushed out numbly. In that instant, she felt her world shatter into pieces. She couldn't hear her own heartbeat, didn't even hear director Lu's excited cry of cut. She only saw Fu Hang lying there, motionless, and that madwoman, leaning on her staff, also staring blankly at the corpse on the ground. Crew members quickly rushed forward. One assistant draped a blanket over Yanan, while another carefully wiped the sweat from her brow. The prop master took the staff away. Suddenly, Yanan felt an emptiness in her chest. Wriggling, Fu Hang arched his back, pushing himself up. He looked down at his torn short sleeve under his arm, a lingering fear in his heart. Damn it, the scene really isn't over until the director yells cut. He'd just been feeling smug about his final 1,000-degree spin. How many stunt performers could pull that off? Who knew that just as he lay on the ground, thinking it was all over, the hairs on the back of his neck would suddenly stand on end? If it weren't for his grandmaster-level preternatural senses making him instinctively twist at the last second, that staff blow, he would have been so incredibly wronged. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Director Lu rushed over, exclaiming loudly. It looked as if, had he not been desperately restraining himself, he would have grabbed Fu Hang's face and planted a kiss on it. As long as the take is usable, Fu Hang said, rolling over with a wry smile. Then he saw those eyes, their pupils unfocused. And then he saw the woman, kneeling on the ground, pounce at him frantically. You scared me to death. You scared me to death. Li Weiyang's tears streamed down like rain. Fu Hang's astonishment lasted only a second before he was overwhelmed by a complex wave of emotions. He felt a little dazed, numbly enduring her blows, his gaze fixed on her beautiful, tear-stained face. Each falling tear was like a 1,000-pound boulder crashing down on his heart, one after another. This was far more brutal than Yanan's staff. Fu Hang slowly raised his hands and, very slowly and carefully, embraced Li Weiyang, his grip gradually tightening. It's okay. It was fake. It was all acting. He held Li Weiyang tightly. Li Weiyang, too, gradually lost her strength, slumping limply into his embrace. The surrounding crew members once again tactfully turned away, busying themselves with their own tasks. Only Yanan, supported by an assistant and wrapped in a blanket, watched the two with a complex expression, frowning, her thoughts unreadable. The next moment, Yanan's eyes widened, because Li Weiyang, who had been limp and supported by Fu Hang while straddling him, suddenly lifted her head, cupped Fu Hang's face, and kissed him deeply. This kiss was deep, heavy, and long. Yanan's pupils slowly dilated. Deep down, she felt not a trace of disgust. Instead, she found it beautiful even. Longed for it. A kiss. Yanan subconsciously touched the corner of her lips. Life is like a play, all dependent on acting. Star in one movie and ensure it profoundly moves at least one audience member. Activate hidden mission, the thespian's path. Initial reward, otherworldly movie script, Batman, Joker. The thespian's path, star in a movie and win the Best Actor award. Rewards will be distributed based on time taken, final awards won by the film, and audience popularity and recognition. Maximum rewards include, but are not limited to, next-generation home battery technology, space debris recycling technology, home optical printer technology. Timer starts. Go for it, host. The passionate kiss left Li Weiyang's brain oxygen-deprived, but Fu Hang was also completely stunned. What was happening? A hidden mission? It gave me a movie script and wants me to become a best actor? And these rewards are pretty bizarre, huh? Battery technology? New energy? Garbage recycling tech? Does it want me to be a janitor? A printer? Wait, space debris? If trash can be recycled, then what about other things? Fu Hang's heart skipped a beat. Damn it, were these really system rewards? Li Weiyang reluctantly ended the kiss. No matter how dazed she was, she knew many people were around, and there were many cameras. She felt Fu Hang, who was lying beneath her, about to get up. With a slightly shy blush, she looked at Fu Hang, who seemed to have been kissed senseless by her. Suddenly, she chuckled, pushed him away, and calmly stood up. While straightening her disheveled clothes, she shot a cold glance at Yanan, who was standing nearby. Then, with a domineering toss of her head, her aura fully unleashed, she strode off the set. No one around paid any attention to Fu Hang. No one even offered a hand to help him up. Fu Hang just sat there on the ground, dumbfounded, his brow furrowed deeply. For a long while, still, no one dared to disturb him. But then Fu Hang suddenly looked up and beckoned to Director Liu. Director Liu Chong, who had clearly been facing away from Fu Hang, spun around abruptly and trotted over. President Fu, you've worked hard. President Fu, let me help you to your rest, Director Liu said with an obsequious smile. No hurry. Sit. Fu Hang waved his hand, gesturing to the ground. Director Liu didn't stand on ceremony and plopped down beside Fu Hang, adopting an air of one ready to receive profound instruction. When's the next film festival? Fu Hang tilted his head, his question very serious. Director Liu's eyes sharpened. He seemed to have sensed Fu Hang's intention. So he's an ambitious boss after all. Ambition is good. I'm ambitious too. If we start filming now, can we make it in time? Fu Hang's tone was casual, as if he were asking whether they could have dumplings for dinner if they started kneading the dough now. If we maintain the current shooting schedule, we could probably make it. But participating in a film festival involves a lot of procedures, invitation lists, and all that. Director Liu also replied with unusual seriousness. I'm not talking about this film, Fu Hang interrupted. I mean starting preparations from scratch for a new movie. A new movie? Director Liu's mouth twitched. 3 projects at once? Juggling 2 is already exhausting, and we're still casting for Infernal Affairs. Fu Hang had actually considered Infernal Affairs. He felt that script was brilliant and had serious potential. But that was ultimately just a flash of personal inspiration, not something he felt was exceptionally reliable. Joker, the script's content, complete with many storyboard frames, had appeared in Fu Hang's mind the moment the system's notification ended. Fu Hang's recent contemplative silence had been him mentally reviewing the entire movie. He didn't know much about filmmaking, but he was profoundly shaken by the plot and its scenes. This Joker, it definitely had potential. Yes, I have a new script. If we start shooting right away, can we make it for the film festival? Mr. Fu, entering a film festival usually involves a lot of red tape. The most important thing is to have a finished film. Otherwise, you can't even register. And a new project, from review to official approval, also has many procedures. Infernal Affairs hasn't even been officially greenlit yet. Director Liu sighed internally. Having this much capital isn't always a good thing. He just does whatever pops into his head. Can't we just be practical and take it one film at a time? You don't need to worry about the procedures. I'll have someone handle them. I'm just asking you, can we get the film finished? Fu Hang's voice was still very serious, as if he hadn't understood Director Liu's hint. Well, that depends on what you want to shoot. The Crow 3. Fu Hang mulled it over for a moment, then quietly uttered the name. Director Liu was stunned. The Crow. It was Director Liu's breakout film, a story about a young billionaire who donned a battlesuit at night to protect the city's peace. When this superhero movie was released back then, it instantly swept the nation, and Liu Chong shot to stardom. But just as Liu Chong, full of enthusiasm and ambition, started filming the sequel, The Crow 2, he was completely overwhelmed by the rise of similar overseas films, from investment to special effects. The Crow 2 hit rock bottom in both box office and reviews, and even the ratings of the originally popular The Crow were affected. Having lost a shirt, Liu Chong reluctantly switched to gangster films, slowly rebuilding his reputation. Film The Crow 3? To be honest, for a moment, Liu Chong was tempted. The Crow was his white moonlight, an unforgettable dream he cherished. But he quickly came to his senses. The Crow 3 could be made, but not now. Superhero films were a different beast entirely compared to Young and Dangerous or Infernal Affairs. One was street drama. As long as the actors were good and the plot was solid, you didn't need many sets. But superhero movies, the kind now called popcorn flicks, were all about the spectacle, the special effects, a completely different concept. For such films, taking years to perfect one was common. Making it for a film festival in 2 months? You gotta be kidding. Fu Hang had mentioned The Crow after seriously considering the script and comparing it to his own experiences. In this world, there was no Batman, so directly adapting it would make the plot feel forced. It would require extra setup to introduce the world's background. That's why Fu Hang had dredged up The Crow from his memory. The premise was almost identical, just swapping a bat for a crow, and it had been a huge hit before with an existing fan base. Crucially, the director was none other than Liu Chong. Clearly, There was a reason the system had provided this script. Mr. Fu, we're already firing on all cylinders with our current projects. If we add another, it's bound to affect the shooting schedule for this one. Stop everything else. Full focus on shooting The Crow 3. Fu Hang patted down his clothes, waved his hand, and Baldy Long brought over a folding chair. After sitting down, Fu Hang lit a cigarette and glanced at the surrounding crew. Stop everything. Lu Chong felt a pang of frustration. His worst fear had materialized. Young and Dangerous was gaining such incredible momentum, and now it was going to be halted? I have my reasons. Just answer me. 2 months, can we make it? Fu Hang took a drag from his cigarette, his gaze cold as he looked at Lu Chong. It's very difficult. It involves script discussions, location scouting, casting, post-production special effects, and so on. For a film like this, 2 months is nowhere near enough. And if we rush it, forget about the film festival. Even releasing it would be a huge risk. Lu Chong was silent for a long time before finally answering, steeling himself. He actually had a very good impression of Fu Hang. He believed he'd never find another boss like him. Mr. Fu, I'm planning a new film, The Crow 3. Put all your current work on hold and give this your full support. Directors, actors, film crews, post-production teams. Find as many as you can, but there's one requirement. They must be the best in the industry. Fu Hang turned to Fong Tiandai, his tone still calm. What's the budget? Fong Tiandai was ever efficient. She wouldn't ask why, only professional questions. No upper limit. Same as always, if money can solve it, it's not a problem. Understood. Regarding actors, do you have any specific requirements? The lead role of the Crow must be played by Heavenly King Lu. Let him name his price. I need him in Hanshang by tomorrow at the latest. Fu Hang's eyes narrowed. Understood. Fong Tiandai nodded slightly and stepped aside, her gaze subtly flicking over to Lu Chong. Lu Chong was dumbfounded. Is he serious? The reason for finding multiple directors and film crews, Fu Hang continued, addressing Lu Chong, is because we don't have enough time. We need to operate on multiple fronts simultaneously. You'll still be the primary director, if you're willing. You can also bring in any industry friends you trust. We're really stopping this project to shoot The Crow 3. Do I look like I'm joking? Fu Hang frowned. Lu Chong was instantly speechless. All right, Fu Hang said, as if suddenly remembering something, then addressed Fong Tiandai again. Make a list of all the approval procedures needed, then find Chun Xiao. He'll get someone to help process them. Give me a computer. I'll give you all the script first. Chun Xiao, from the Sub-Bureau. Fong Tiandai was slightly taken aback. Aren't they in different systems? Can Chun Xiao handle this? But Fu Hang said no more. Seriously? I'm going to risk my life against a foreign spy chief this afternoon. You think I can't handle this little thing? Clack, clack, clack. The Grandmaster's typing speed was terrifyingly fast. In less than 20 minutes, a fresh script was ready. Lu Chong eagerly took it and began to read carefully. Then his eyes widened bit by bit. Did he just watch the boss type this out himself? No way, right? To be perfectly honest, if he had seen the script first, he wouldn't have given Young and Dangerous a second glance. This wasn't to say that the Young and Dangerous script was truly inferior to The Crow 3, but rather that The Crow was his white moonlight, his unforgettable dream. Imagine this. The first love you'd yearned for more than a decade ago suddenly appears in your bed, enchanting and beautiful. Not only has her beauty not faded with time, but her figure is even more stunning, and her skills more refined. At a time like this, would you even look at another woman? Lu Chong's hands began to tremble. He looked at Fu Hang in awe, as if gazing up at a god. Boss, this script. It has dual male leads, right? If Heavenly King Lu plays the Crow, then who will play this villain, the Joker? Lu Chong asked the question that concerned him most. In fact, in that instant, several suitable actors had flashed through his mind, including some who were also Heavenly King-level film stars. But he always felt something was slightly off. Me? Fu Hang tilted his head, his reply extremely concise. Fu Hang left with Baldy Long, leaving the film crew operating at full throttle again. To shoot an award-aiming commercial blockbuster in 2 months felt incredible to insiders, and also got their blood pumping. If this succeeded, it could go down in film history. Due to his afternoon schedule, Fu Hang's lunch was set at that suburban farmhouse inn, the same guest house where those 4 idiots were under house arrest. Li Weiyang also made a quick getaway, leaving in high spirits. She had a lunch appointment with her father. Strictly speaking, her father had asked to see her, and it seemed quite urgent. Seeing her father at the restaurant, Li Weiyang smiled radiantly. Ever since her father had unhesitatingly used all his savings to support her and lend money to Fu Hang, Li Weiyang's bond with her father had deepened. And after Fu Hang provided an unimaginable return, her father doted on Li Weiyang, indulging her every whim. It seemed their father-daughter relationship hadn't been this good in over 20 years. Just back from a set? Don't wear yourself out. As a manager, you can't do everything yourself. Don't sit in the chairman's seat worrying like a general manager. You hired those people. Let them do what they're paid to do. If they can't cut it, just replace them. Li Bingyao looked at his daughter with concern. During this time, he had watched his once sheltered young lady gradually transform into a commanding businesswoman. There was some gratification in it, but also a touch of heartache. I know. I'm not managing Ganlu Milk Tea much anymore. After Hung Yu invested, they sent over a team, and those guys are very capable. Li Weiyang sat down opposite her father, shrugging nonchalantly. Like that? Aren't you worried they might? Li Bingyao's expression changed, and he reminded her with concern. There's nothing to worry about. Ganlu Milk Tea originally belonged to Shen Qingluan anyway. Li Weiyang looked up, meeting her father's gaze directly, her eyes unwavering. But then, the sudden thought that Fu Hang had actually given Hung Yu to Shen Qingluan made her feel a twinge of jealousy. That was 5 billion in equity. Do you know how much your Weiyang Entertainment is worth now? Li Bingyao had watched his daughter grow up, so he naturally caught the flicker of unease in her eyes. Li Weiyang was slightly taken aback. She hadn't really paid attention to that. She'd been quite busy lately. Although she said Hung Yu's people were handling Ganlu Milk Tea, she would never relinquish control. She just delegated the work. As for Weiyang Entertainment's value, she truly hadn't looked into it. You've never cared about the financials? Li Bingyao looked at his daughter with amusement, but his heart was filled with emotion. She really only had to focus on conquering new territories, without a single worry about logistics or supplies. If he'd had such conditions back in his day, he might have gone public by now. The finances, there isn't a problem, is there? Li Weiyang asked hesitantly, a flash of panic in her eyes. Here's the report finance just gave me. Take a look yourself. Li Bingyao picked up a document from the table and handed it over. Weiyang Entertainment's core team was mostly composed of personnel seconded from Li Bingyao's original staff, naturally including the finance department. Li Weiyang had never asked the company to hide anything from her father, so the company was almost completely transparent to him. Li Weiyang anxiously picked up the document. After just a couple of glances, she looked up in disbelief. Just how much money did he put into the company? Li Weiyang was astonished. Including the 2 billion from half an hour ago, it's 6 billion now, and none of this money came through investment channels. It was injected as a gift from an overseas institution. Li Weiyang's mouth gradually fell open. She truly hadn't expected Fu Hang to silently give so much. You might not understand the intricacies, so let me explain. To put it bluntly, once this money enters the company account, it has absolutely nothing to do with Fu Hang. It belongs entirely to you, the sole owner of Weiyang Entertainment. Li Bingyao explained seriously, his expression complex. He had actually been a bit alarmed when he saw this. Including what Fu Hang had helped snatch before, the total was nearing 10 billion. He had secretly hired a professional team to analyze it for a long time, but the result was... It was all reasonable, legal, and compliant. Except, it didn't quite sit right emotionally. Even if it was for keeping someone, how many women could you keep with 10 billion? You could form your own girl group of 101 at home, couldn't you? This was why Li Bingyao urgently needed to talk to Li Weiyang. Li Weiyang dazedly put down the document, a gentle, touched expression appearing on her face. Was it because he sensed I knew Shen Qingluan got Hung Yu? Is that why you? You are a princess destined to fly on a rainbow. Go do what you love. Those heart-stirring, romantic words echoed in her ears again, and Li Weiyang's eyes actually welled up slightly. Li Bingyao remained silent, quietly observing his daughter's happiness. After a long while, Li Weiyang pulled out a tissue, dabbed the corners of her eyes, and looked at her father with a hint of bashfulness. Have you heard about the Solomon delegation? Li Bingyao asked calmly, seeing Li Weiyang emerge from her emotional state. Yeah, it's all over town. Aren't they just scared after getting beaten in the financial markets, coming to suck up, expand their business, and cover their overseas losses? Li Weiyang pursed her lips dismissively. They are Solomon. After all, Li Bingyao reminded her gravely. His daughter had really gotten arrogant. You're not thinking of cooperating with Solomon, are you? Li Weiyang's expression faltered as she seemed to realize something. Where would I get such an idea? I've already handed the entire company over to your brother. I'm just a retired old man now, waiting for you to support me in my old age. Li Bingyao suddenly burst out laughing. He had truly come to terms with things. He'd wasted half his life. His ambitions had not only harmed his daughter, but had also nearly bankrupted the family. And then his lifetime savings turned out to be less than what that son-in-law of mine had casually given. What was he even striving for? Then why did you suddenly bring it up? I wanted to tell you that the Solomon delegation's first stop was Hengyu. And word is, Hengyu secured all their orders for the rubber industry. Li Bingyao paused thoughtfully for a moment, feeling there were some things he had to tell his daughter, who was often out of touch with worldly affairs. Hengyu. Even if Li Weiyang didn't pay much attention to other company situations, she still sensed something unusual about such an abnormal collaboration. Is it because of Fu Hang? Li Weiyang realized why her father had suddenly brought this up. Most likely. Otherwise, given Hengyu's size, they wouldn't be able to handle such a large order. Li Weiyang's lips thinned. The warm, fuzzy feeling from before wasn't quite so sweet anymore. Not only that, word is the Solomon delegation's second stop is Yuanhua. Li Bingyao sighed softly, finally stating the fact. But compared to the previous news, when Li Weiyang heard Yuanhua, the image of those clear eyes that surfaced in her mind didn't cause much of a stir in her heart. He's already so good to Shen Qingluan, so it's no surprise about you two. I haven't asked how far things have progressed between you two. When it comes to matters of the heart, I no longer have the right to interfere. As your father, I naturally hope you find a man to spend your life with, someone you can grow old with through thick and thin. But with Fu Hang, Dad sees the situation more clearly than you do. He's not a man you can have all to yourself. So have you thought this through? Li Bingyao's voice was tinged with heaviness. Truly, for a father to say such words was disheartening. I don't know. In front of her father, Li Weiyang was still like her younger self, unable to hide her emotions. How Fu Hang treats you. Setting aside everything else, that 10 billion alone puts him above most men in this world. But our family isn't short of money. At our level, whether it's 1 billion or 100 billion, it doesn't make much difference to our daily lives. If you truly. But I really like him. I can't leave him. Li Weiyang understood her father's implication. Then hurry up and have a child. Since you can't have him exclusively, a child will help stabilize your relationship. I don't mean for you to have a child to fight for the family fortune. If I haven't misjudged his character, those things won't be your concern in the future. He'll give you what's yours. Don't fight over money. A child? Li Weiyang paused, a blush creeping up her cheeks. Yes, a child is the strongest bond between two people. With a child, even if he has many women, even if you lose your looks in old age, you'll always be the mother of his child. With that connection. But he hasn't even. You two haven't yet. Li Bingyao understood his daughter's coyness, his eyes widening in an instant. Li Weiyang blushed and nodded almost imperceptibly. Li Bingyao was floored. What in the world? He threw out 10 billion, and you haven't even gotten him into bed yet? What are you playing at? Are you a simp? Even simps don't go this far. That afternoon, Li Weiyang walked out of the hospital, somewhat dazed, her expression a strange mix of complexity. She was a decisive and straightforward woman, and also a daughter who listened to her father. After his suggestion, the first thing she thought of was to go to the hospital for a gynecological examination, a pregnancy checkup. In her limited understanding, women underwent many checkups before and after pregnancy. However, this examination revealed a truth that nearly shattered her worldview, her outlook on life, and her values all at once. So that was why Wang Haitao had stormed off cursing at the last minute that day. Why he had been so furious. And why, after that, Wang Haitao hadn't touched her, hadn't even been willing to share a bed with her, only maintaining a superficial marriage. So she wasn't a complete woman. She had a congenital defect. A stone woman. The original text adds a note here. It's not convenient to elaborate on medical knowledge. Readers unfamiliar with the term may need to research it. The Ming Dynasty's Guang Xiao Zeipei Pian has detailed records. Staring at the unfamiliar medical term on the report, the doctor's precise, solemn, and detailed explanation echoed in her mind, making her head buzz. Fortunately, the full diagnostic report later revealed it was only a structural defect. Her organ functions were normal, it wouldn't affect her fertility, and it could be repaired with surgery. The disadvantages of her mother dying young and being raised solely by her father were now apparent. Damn all, to think she only found out today. We're different. Without a moment's hesitation, Li Weiyang turned back and re-entered the hospital. She would have the surgery. She would contact the world's top hospitals, engage the world's best doctors, and achieve the most perfect restoration. Gone was the dazed woman who had exited the hospital earlier. The Li Weiyang who turned back was filled with fighting spirit, her stride powerful and confident. Driven by the grand goal of perpetuating human life and the pursuit of a happy future, she walked forward without hesitation, resolute, unwavering, as if ready to face death itself. Within her, the Weiyang saber hummed and vibrated ceaselessly. Its saber intent swept across heaven and earth, severing the last traces of deep winter's chill. The day the Weiyang saber was unsealed would be a day of blood-red skies, a day to slaughter billions of souls. Meanwhile, far away in a residential building in Jingcheng, another father with graying temples sat at a dining table. Olding had aged. Recently, he'd been suffering from chest tightness and shortness of breath. The doctor said it was due to an old gunshot wound from his youth and advised him to rest well. But he knew it wasn't the old injury. It was a sickness of the heart. His perfectly fine daughter, a child born in the Republic, raised under the red flag, a model of proper upbringing, had actually quit her job as a police officer to become an actress in the entertainment industry. Looking at the movie stills and on-set photos he had managed to obtain, Olding felt that public morals were degenerating, and people were not what they used to be. How had his good daughter turned into this? Those ruthless eyes, that wicked smile, that roguish tilt of her head and shrug of her shoulders. Where was the slightest trace of his daughter? He silently closed his eyes, and an image surfaced in his mind. His daughter, wearing her police uniform for the first time, standing at the doorway, saluting him. She had been filled with an upright spirit, radiating righteousness, open and honorable, a hidden gem. She stood tall and unyielding like a pine tree, facing the world's chaos with integrity, unbent by worldly pressures, steadfastly upholding her principles through every storm. She used to have such strong convictions. Actually, I think being an actress is fine. It's safer than being on the front lines. At least we don't have to worry about her day in and day out. Ying Yanen's mother put down her bowl and chopsticks, showing none of old Ying's melancholy. Instead, she seemed relieved. That stubborn old man, insisting on grooming our daughter as his successor, raising her like a son. How long has it been since she graduated? Twice she's had near-death experiences at gunpoint. How many mothers could accept that? He took a bullet when he was young. Did he want her daughter to take a few too? But this entertainment industry. Olding still felt uneasy. What's wrong with the entertainment industry? With our family standing, could she possibly be bullied? Olding fell silent. He hadn't dared to tell his wife about Fu Hang. After Fu Hang's identity and actions had become public knowledge, Olding had naturally been the first to get his hands on the primary intelligence. To be honest, under normal circumstances, Olding would have wanted to become sworn brothers with Fu Hang. This man was practically a hero of the people, a pillar of society, a cornerstone of a nation, even though Olding didn't have all the information. For instance, he couldn't see the complete details about the Golden Triangle. It didn't diminish Fu Hang's monumental achievements. His operations in the overseas financial markets alone were enough to write Fu Hang into the history books. At Old Ying's level, what he saw wasn't how much money Fu Hang had reclaimed for everyone. It was the deterrent power of Fu Hang's talent. To foreign powers, Fu Hang's existence was a deterrent comparable to a nuclear weapon hanging over their financial markets. As long as they knew that Grand Cathay possessed such a prodigy, they would tread carefully, at least with their financial tactics, hesitant to act rashly. But as Fu Hang's file grew more complete, Olding saw other things too. That rascal was indeed a thorough capitalist, thoroughly imbued with all the decadent ideas and bad habits of capitalism. And the women, there were far too many to let his, Old Ying's, only daughter get mixed up in that. Olding felt a deep sense of revulsion. It came back to the same thing. If Fu Hang weren't so extraordinarily accomplished, already recognized by the higher-ups, Old Ying's fatherly love might have triggered a landslide of power abuse. You're nearing retirement age anyway. Why don't you apply for early retirement? Go and stay with our daughter. Olding mused, then tentatively suggested. After arguing with him on the phone once, his daughter had actually started ignoring his calls. Damn it, this was the first time his daughter had ever talked back to him. Has your rebellious phase come this late? Early retirement? Ying Yanen's mother, however, was slightly stunned and fell into deep thought. Jack Solomon arrived at Yuanbua at 3 in the afternoon. This time, he didn't bring his extravagant entourage. The main objective of his trip had already been achieved. Though the process was somewhat embarrassing, he had indeed made contact with Catfish. The Catfish plan involved a crucial arrangement within the organization. Re-establishing contact meant this trip was a complete success. Therefore, as soon as Jack Solomon left Yu, He immediately arranged the related work to ensure this morning's negotiation plan could be implemented swiftly. Truth be told, there was no need to come to Yuan Trade at this point. In the original plan, he was supposed to first make contact with Catfish's various enterprises to confirm Catfish's identity, and only then approach Catfish directly. But Jack came anyway, for no other reason than Catfish had requested it. Miss Catfish's exact words were, "I hear your afternoon schedule is Yuan Trade? That little company has been quite a handful lately, hasn't it? Especially that little assistant." Catfish spoke very cryptically, but Jack Solomon understood. Having manipulated people his entire life, he was all too familiar with such loaded statements. Catfish was displeased with that frontman, Fu Hang. She wanted to use Jack's hand to teach him a lesson. Little assistant. Having thoroughly investigated Fu Hang, Jack knew that the CEO's assistant at Yuan Trade was Fu Hang's little lover. It seemed this pretty boy truly didn't know what was good for him, carrying on with his assistant right under Catfish's nose. So, Jack Solomon came, bringing only 6 tall, well-built, highly skilled, and well-trained bodyguards. He didn't even bring a translator. He came to Yuanbois to make a show of force. The setback he'd suffered at Hengyu that morning, though unseen by outsiders, had left him feeling resentful. As the people of the Celestial Empire would say, his mind wasn't at ease. He urgently needed an outlet for his pent-up frustration. What a coincidence, right? Jack Solomon arrived very discreetly, driving directly into Yuanbois Trade's underground garage and taking the elevator straight to the 28th floor. When the pretty receptionist learned his name, her shocked and flustered expression made his aristocratic pride, lost at Hengyu that morning, surge back. He was respectfully led to the conference room. He didn't have his bodyguards wait outside. Instead, they lined up neatly behind him. It was a long conference table. He naturally took the head seat, his 6 bodyguards standing with cold expressions and an imposing air. They, too, were simmering with frustration. That morning, 6 of them, 3 armed, had been utterly crushed by a mere slip of a girl, not even managing to draw their guns. All right, strictly speaking, that one wasn't human. Jack Solomon leaned back in the executive chair, eyes half closed, mulling over how he would discipline the pretty boy who had displeased Catfish. Orientals are always like this, arrogant from being spoiled. Isn't that the phrase? Jack Solomon sneered inwardly. However, as he raised his wrist for the 3rd time to look at his $1 million luxury watch, he finally realized half an hour had passed. Had no one attended to him? Not even a cup of coffee. On the conference table, there was indeed a traditional Chinese kung fu tea set, but it was placed at the very end of the table, directly opposite him, a long way off. Jack Solomon's brow furrowed, a menacing aura spreading from him. This damned Oriental, merely a pretty boy kept by Catfish, dares to slight me like this? It seemed the intensity of today's lesson would have to be increased. Jack Solomon's expression grew even colder. But, what now? Keep waiting? Or go hurry them along? But who would go? The 6 bodyguards behind him didn't speak a word of Chinese, and the receptionist who had brought him here clearly didn't speak any foreign languages. Good God, one incompetent pretty boy. The receptionist of an international trading company can't even speak a foreign language. He couldn't possibly get up and hurry them himself now. Could he? After putting on this empty show of authority for half an hour, Jack Solomon was starting to get agitated. He reluctantly turned his head and signaled a bodyguard with his eyes. The bodyguard understood and strode towards the door. Just then, however, the conference room door was pushed open, averting the awkwardness of the bodyguard having to use sign language. And Jack Solomon once again saw the pretty boy who had dared to block his motorcade that morning and ignore him. Fu Hang entered alone. He pushed the door open with a blank expression, calmly sat down, and the seat he chose was directly opposite Jack Solomon. Jack Solomon's eyes narrowed. He noticed that this conceited pretty boy hadn't even glanced at him after entering. Jack, his face cold, said nothing, just stared intently at the other man. At a time like this, it was all about presence, about dominance. You dare to keep me waiting this long? Let's see how you explain yourself. Jack's gaze was intensely pressuring. Even though they were far apart, he was certain his dominant eyes could make the other man tremble. However, he was disappointed. He didn't speak, and the pretty boy opposite him also remained silent. Instead, after sitting down, Fu Hang tilted his head slightly to one side, a flicker of suspicion on his face. It was as if he were listening to something. But Jack had been watching this pretty boy closely. There were no earphones in his ears. Putting on an act? Jack sneered, the pressure in his eyes intensifying. He was very curious what kind of expression this pretty boy would show when he finally looked up and met his gaze. Life is a stage, and all success depends on acting. Hidden quest triggered. Best Actor Life Side Challenge. Within the time limit, use your acting skills to obtain what you desire. Quest completion reward. +1 master level film-related skill. Countdown initiated. 59:59. 59:58. 59:57. Damn it. This morning I was worried that I'd never acted in a movie, that my skills weren't up to par, and that even if the film made it to the festival, I wouldn't have a chance at an award. And now it's giving me a cheat? An hour. No rush. Fu Hang still didn't look up. Instead, he took out an exquisite roll of cloth from his pocket. Across from him, Jack frowned slightly. What's he doing? Is he going to offer me a gift as an apology? He watched the pretty boy spread the cloth roll on the table before him and gently draw out a fine, gleaming silver needle from its center. Jack was stunned. He recognized this. It was something the Chinese use for healing, called acupuncture, he thought. But what are you doing with that? Are you too nervous to speak, so you're going to give yourself a shot? Jack raised his chin slightly, silently watching the pretty boy's performance. The 6 bodyguards behind him also watched with great interest, a mocking amusement in their eyes, as if watching a monkey perform, because the way this pretty boy held the long needle. How to put it? His hand posture was quite elegant, like an actor from an opera troupe, possessing a unique kind of beauty. Fu Hang held the needle with an orchid finger gesture, his face still devoid of expression, but inwardly he cursed the damn system again. Are you going to perform a talent for me? Jack was also captivated by the delicate, almost feminine gesture, and truth be told, much of his pent-up frustration had dissipated. So this is how this pretty boy wins Catfish's favor? It's certainly novel. Fu Hang, however, said nothing. He merely stared silently at the long needle, and then, with a flick of his orchid-fingered hand, the long needle magically disappeared. Jack was quite astonished. Well, now he's got some tricks, hasn't he? Jack couldn't help but sit up straighter, watching the other man intently. Because Fu Hang, with a gentle movement, produced 2 more long needles from within the cloth roll. This time, Jack held his breath, determined to see how this pretty boy made the long needles vanish. To be fair, a man favored by Catfish must indeed have something special. This magic trick is pretty cool. And he's smart too. He knew I came here angry, yet he thought of this unconventional way to break the ice. But so what? He's just a clown. The 6 bodyguards behind him also stared wide-eyed. They prided themselves on their keen eyesight, but they hadn't caught that last move at all. Of course, they also failed to notice that among the 6 bodyguards standing in a row, one of them had a slightly dazed look in his eyes. Almost like a replay, Fu Hang's elegant fingers flicked again, and 2 long needles vanished once more. A smile touched Jack's lips. He'd been paying close attention, yet he still hadn't seen where Fu Hang had hidden the long needles. He vaguely sensed a silvery glint shoot in his direction, but surely such flexible, long needles couldn't fly that far. Suspicious, he turned his head towards where the silver gleam had flashed. Then his eyes widened slightly in surprise. He saw the bodyguard behind him, eyes glazed, mouth slightly agape, as if drooling. Most importantly, under the reflection of the light, he saw half a long needle quivering in the bodyguard's chest. Realization seemed to dawn on Jack. He whipped his head around, finally meeting those cold, indifferent eyes. Fu Hang had looked up, a playful smirk on his lips, and his elegant fingers now held 3 long needles. "Stop him!" Jack roared, ducking in terror. The bodyguards behind him, instantly alert, rushed towards Fu Hang. But to their confusion, 3 of their armed comrades stood frozen, completely motionless. The next moment, 3 soft thuds sounded as the 3 bodyguards who had taken but a single step collapsed rigidly to the floor. Then 3 more thuds, and the 3 drooling ones were down as well. Jack felt the hair on his body stand on end. He hesitantly peeked out from under the table, staring at Fu Hang in stunned disbelief. What the hell? Was this some kind of Eastern sorcery? Catfish's kept man knew sorcery? Seeing Fu Hang's hands resting on the table, not drawing more needles, Jack calmed slightly, pondering the man's intentions. Was this a show of force to intimidate him? He glanced uncertainly at the 6 motionless bodyguards on the floor. Their chests were still rising and falling. They weren't dead. Jack considered himself a man who had weathered many storms. Seeing Fu Hang make no further moves, he figured the real conversation was about to begin. He forced himself to calm down, his expression turning stern as he sat up straight again. He couldn't afford to look weak, nor did he need to cower. This was the Celestial Empire. Given his status, no one besides that madman Catfish would dare harm him. And as it happened, it was Catfish who had instructed him to come. Strangely, however, Fu Hang still didn't speak. Instead, he calmly tapped the table, then unhurriedly took the kung fu tea set before him and began to prepare tea. Jack frowned slightly, but before he could ask anything, the conference room door was pushed open. "Mark!" Jack was taken aback. 3 men of mixed Western and Chinese heritage walked in. It was the missing ghost unit. Upon seeing him, the 3 newcomers' eyes blazed with suppressed killing intent as they charged straight at him, without hesitation. Mark was furious, incandescent with rage. This damn traitor. He'd sold out their location, causing 2 entire elite teams to be decimated, with only 4 survivors. Those who had died were his brothers in arms, men he'd faced life and death with. Truth be told, there hadn't been much camaraderie among the ghosts before. If Mark tried to recall, he couldn't even remember what he'd said to his fallen comrades. But recently, the 4 survivors had relied on each other in the Celestial Empire, forging a deep bond, especially during their confinement at that farmhouse inn. That time had been happy and fulfilling, making them forget who they were, forget their mission. The estate was well-equipped and abundantly supplied. Not only did it have the latest game consoles, but even a KTV room, a sauna, fully automatic massage chairs, and, most surprisingly, an automatic mahjong table. Catfish was clearly protecting them, yet he did it with such consideration. And that young man Catfish had sent. He was gentle and well-spoken. During one conversation, Mark had casually mentioned that watermelons in the Celestial Empire were delicious. The very next day, the young man had procured an entire truckload of watermelons. My God, it was winter. On nights when they'd had too much to drink, they'd inevitably talk about the past. If their comrades hadn't died, could they be enjoying peace and tranquility now, just like these people? It was all because of this damn captain in front of them. This goddamn traitor. Not only had he betrayed them, but he had also sold out all the organization's painstakingly established undercover networks in the Celestial Empire. When Mr. Catfish visited them today, he brought terrible news. Mr. Catfish had arrived too late. He couldn't save those comrades who had endured humiliation while hiding deep within the Celestial Empire. Mr. Catfish showed them photos of the destroyed strongholds. It was a horrific sight. This was partly their fault, too. If they had given this information to Mr. Catfish sooner, perhaps he could have found a way to save them. And now they knew that Jack Solomon had come to the Celestial Empire personally because he had sensed their escape and was here to deal with them himself. This damn traitor. He wanted to wipe them out completely. Mark, radiating killing intent, lunged at Jack. Before Jack could react, a massive hand shot towards his neck. "What do you do?" Jack only managed a strangled cry before a gleaming silver pistol was shoved into his mouth. It was shoved in deep. He'd never imagined he'd experience a deep throat in the Celestial Empire. He recognized the gun. It used a special gas-operated system, 50 AE caliber, and had a cool name, Desert Eagle. Fired from this angle, the powerful recoil would shatter his front teeth, and his head would explode like a watermelon, the entire top of his skull blown off. He stared at Mark in terror. This was the ghost agent he himself had dispatched to the Celestial Empire. Why was he now shoving a pistol down his throat? He saw Mark's bloodthirsty eyes and understood the furious rage within them. Mark desperately wanted to pull the trigger. The hand holding the gun was trembling, but he seemed to be restraining himself. What had happened? What in the world had happened? It felt like ever since he'd arrived in Hacheng, nothing had gone according to plan. And from Fu Hang's entrance to having a gun jammed in his throat, only moments had passed, and his brain couldn't keep up at all. His head was slammed onto the table. Across the long conference table, he saw the man who remained as calm and unruffled as ever. He had already brewed a pot of tea perfectly and was now unhurriedly raising the teapot high to pour. The amber tea, as if imbued with life, streamed down from the high spout, tracing a graceful arc through the air before landing precisely into the white porcelain cup. Instantly, the fragrance of tea filled the air, wafting upwards, as if whispering of its lingering, profound charm. Damn it, he was so far away, yet he could actually smell the tea. Jack's eyes darted around, trying to find answers on the faces of the other 2 ghosts, but they didn't even glance at him. They bypassed him, went to the back, disarmed the 6 bodyguards, and tied them up securely. Finally, the wafting aroma of the tea seemed to calm Mark. He glared venomously at Jack and slowly pulled the pistol out of his throat. Jack started coughing violently, but the hand pressing his head down didn't budge, and in fact pressed even harder because of his tremors. "Mark, are you crazy? I'm your superior, and haven't you started following Catfish? I'm one of Catfish's men now, too. We're on the same side." However, Mark looked at him as if he were an idiot, staring for a full 3 seconds. Then, with an adoring gaze, Mark stole a glance at Fu Heng, who was sitting there calmly, sipping his tea. Jack followed his gaze and saw Fu Heng gently lift the white porcelain teacup, blow lightly on the surface, and slowly bring it to his lips. That refined demeanor, that infuriatingly cool aura, made even him, an old tycoon steeped in aristocratic etiquette for years, feel inadequate. In that instant, he suddenly felt that savoring red wine and smoking cigars was utterly lame. Tea tasting was the epitome of style. But then his eyes shot wide open. A terrifying thought surfaced in his mind. Easter genetics, around 30 years old, male.